Yeah,
But I
yeah.
wanted to also kind of just like I wanted to get into it with you because I love this project, but two, I feel I want to address the hypothetical kind of people that are going to, the literary world that's going to say, "Oh, you're making this up, right? It's not real," or like,
Yeah,
yeah, like all that. So as much as we can, without dragging journals through the mud and doxing yourself and all of that good stuff. But yeah, so
yeah, that's cool with me, man.
yeah. Because I want to. I mean, people have no idea. I think people, especially that aren't in the literary scene, like what it actually is right now. So I
Hmm.
want to give like legitimacy, and then maybe we can do like a little bit of a timeline. But again, all the kinds of questions, and then I just want to talk poetry too, man. Like I just want to talk contemporary
Yeah,
poetry, your favorites, and all of that too. So a lot to cover. But podcasting, we'll see where we go. But yeah,
yeah, absolutely. That all sounds good to me.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy.
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No!
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
this is Andrew Whitstadt, and you were listening to Heavy Board, and we're recording this on April 12th, 2025. My guest today writes under the pen name Jasper Ceylon. He's a writer, poet, scholar, and operates a Substack page under the same name. But his latest book is an elaborate hoax, a years long project of writing and submitting fake poems, hoax poems, to journals and literary mags all over the country. And not only getting 47 of those poems published in 30 journals, he also got nominated for awards by these journals for the fake poems, the hoax poems. The book is called Echolalia Review, a satire of the Contemporary Poetry Journal, published just this month. And Jasper is here to tell the wild tale of how this elaborate hoax came to be, how it fooled so many, and to talk about the state of contemporary poetry in general. Jasper, thanks so much for coming on Heavy Board.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew.
Of course, of course. I wanted to start this off, and we usually start this off with like more personal questions, but we're gonna keep it since you're doing the pen name stuff. I wanted to ask just kind of like authoritative, establishing authority, right, for this kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, like, what's your deal? How did this get started? How old are you? Are you an undergrad, grad school? How did you get started with this? Like, what's the background? If you feel free to share that, kind of setting you up to get into poetry and all of this stuff.
Sure, yeah. So, I've been through academia, let's say.
Many
Uh,
listeners to the show have, yeah.
yeah, it's did I have the greatest time there? Probably not, because as you can tell from my work, I'm a little bit of a contrarian, I'm a little bit of a counterculture type. So, yeah, I went and entered into an English program and everything, and I could have gone straight through. My professors told me I was doing great, all this kind of stuff. Could have gone and done an MFA, all that shit. But yeah, just really, I had the same problems with academia that I had with the poetry world. So um,
When
there's,
was this? Like, you don't have to give exact dates or anything, but like roughly, because I
yeah,
always say like, yeah, my undergrad was like, I finished that like 2014ish, and then grad school I finished like 2019ish. And I only ask because I think those timelines do matter. It was a different world. Let's say if you went to undergrad for English in like 2008, than
yeah, yeah.
if you did like 2013 or something. Yeah, roughly. Like what kind of for undergrad stuff.
Yeah, so like I started my undergrad right before the big cultural shift. Like it was in the air, let's say.
That's when I started grad school. Is this like 2015ish, 20? Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Because the big shift, they've like sort of pinpointed it to 2014. So like
Right.
I started my undergrad right before that. And then yeah, kind of all hell broke loose after that. But I took a bunch of time off. I had a weird path, just because of, personal things and living life of it strangely. I traveled around. I did basically everything that, let's say, the I guess image of a poet would do.
A Jack Kerouac novel is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like I ended up all over the world.
yeah.
I almost died like several times. Like I would really like to go into all that, but yeah, I will dox myself if I do that. But yeah, so like I had a very unusual path, and I mean it gave me ample material, and it turned me into the writer I became, so I don't regret it at all. But academia kind of fell by the wayside. But the effort that I would have put into academia, I guess I ended up putting into poetry and writing in general instead. So that's kind of how we arrived at the beginnings of this.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I think people don't understand this either. That there. I call it the pre-online and the post-online, kind of the pre-internet, post-internet world. And it wasn't it doesn't line up exactly from when the internet was invented. It's like kind of like you said, around this 2012ish, 2014ish time where social media started becoming the filter that everybody uses to view the world and everything that happens in it. There's like a distinct break from that stuff. So I just like to set that up for everybody because again, there's a lot of doubters out there.
Yeah.
So you were in college during kind of when this was all ramping up. What were the workshops like in college when you were in there? Just as quickly, because I'm just curious for myself here. And
Yeah.
not even like you don't have to give the name of the school or anything, but I'm talking like people hear like when you complain about this stuff, you're like, oh, that's only happening at like Harvard or Yale or something. It's like no, this is like your average state school. Like your average
Yeah.
local private college. Just yeah, what was that like for you, the experience? Because I mean apparently it turned you off from going to grad school and doing it again, that kind of experience.
Yeah.
But what was that like?
Yeah. Well, I have that fake essay in the Echo issue that's just like replete with the most like annoying vocabulary possible. I just throw in a bunch of Latin at words and all this sort of shit. It's just like basically three massive sentences at first. Um, and I did that because I appreciate academia at least for what it at least theoretically offers. If I hadn't gone and done any schooling, um, I don't think I would have maybe developed some of the skills that I currently have.
Right.
So, that's cool. But I realized pretty quickly that I was kind of hitting my threshold for what I was going to get out of it, unless I kind of knuckled under and started to, let's say, accept the programming, as it were. And spiritually, I just couldn't do that. I couldn't sit there in a tutorial class, as we called them, and go, yeah, you know what? I really agree with the professor's, whatever critical lens on this particular issue. And what was it? I've had to read so many fucking books under that lens over the years. Like, it could be Jude the Obscure, it could be this or that, but oh, like I just started checking out. I would just like half-ass everything, even though I could just pretty easily keep up. And it forces people like us to, yeah, just like have this strange kind of inner conflict in relation to higher learning, where I started near the end of my undergrad to just be kind of a jackass about it.
Yeah.
Like I was so frustrated with
I
it.
mean, that's the first stage. Yeah. Like that's when you start to kind of realize what it is. I think that's the first stage is you kind of get that kind of fuck this, like I'm going to fuck around and, not why am I bothered? Like I think that is like the first step in kind of growing into, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly, right. And I just wanted to become a better writer. I really just wanted to learn from the best in my area and sort of apply that and do something worthwhile with it. But it wasn't working out that way. So I remember one time when I was kind of getting fed up here. we had to read like a YA tier novel, and this was like a third year course or some shit. Like, we're supposed to be reading things with a certain degree of maturity and like, complexity, and here's like The Marrow Thieves by Sherry DeMoline or whatever. And I'm like, oh, so we're 16 again? Like,
Yeah.
all right, great. So I don't read the book. They want me to do a close reading of maybe 3 chapters and then do like a presentation on it. Haven't read a single word of it other than to scan it and realize that I don't want to do this at all. There's mention of them eating like Doritos and all this sort of stuff in a post-apocalyptic society where they're hunting indigenous people and stuff like that. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So I go up there. I'm like, hey guys, I'm just gonna be honest. I just sort of throw the book on the TA's desk. I'm like, I'll be honest. It's embarrassing that we have to do this at this stage. This isn't really a degree at this point anymore. This is just like high school plus, and everyone just goes immediately silent. Um, I had one friend in the class, this like Hong Kong like expat rich dude who just drove his dad's like Porsche to school for fun, was just kind of there to be there. He's like, oh shit, like I can hear him say oh shit in the back. I'm like, all right man, this one's for you. And I just like for like 15 minutes I just shit on this book so hard in front of everyone to the point where people were like leaving the room. Like they would get up and walk in front of me as like protest. So yeah, I mean shit like that used to happen after I just kind of lost any care for it. And I knew I could be a poet and a writer on my own, but that was my experience in a nutshell with academia.
Yeah. I think people don't understand this either. Like, if you're, I mean, obviously there's the memes, there's the people that say screw this, and then this is something that I think it makes me like, I'm not anti-institution, like I'm not like, fuck the institutions, blah blah. Like, I think they're too important, to like to just
Yeah.
completely we think. But like, I am somebody that like is aware of like they need to be severely reformed. I mean, this is insane. Like, I do Harold Bloom all the time on the podcast. Listeners know this. Like, I love Bloom, and he was saying this stuff back in the 80s and 90s. Like just kind of
Right.
where literature, specifically the humanities, was headed. Like, he has that famous quote, they don't teach literature anymore in college. They teach some form of ideology or another. And I think he was
Yeah.
saying this in the 90s, man, like during the first canon wars. Little did we know what it was going to become, but I just like looking back on it, I was just thinking like, oh my God, like there really is this kind of loss. Like, for example, the same thing in grad school for me. It's great because this teacher was great. I loved this teacher. She was a great professor. I took a drama class with her, and she had these, so knowledgeable. She's knew so much about these plays, from the 20th century all over the world. It was mostly 20th century plays. And then she taught this class that I didn't take, but like other people took it. It was like a graphic novel course, like in grad school. This is
Yeah.
graduate level work. And they're like, we're pretending that these like, young adult or graphic novels are the same thing, like because it's a compelling read or, a page turner or something. But like,
Yeah.
it's like, no, you're missing the point. Actually, like, you're missing what makes this book better than the other one. So yeah, I just wanted to hear that. But yeah, please go on if you got. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience too, you'd have these pockets where people were doing things seriously, and like I met a couple of professors that I'm still in touch with, who were just like super old school and just kind of didn't give in, and they kind of forced themselves out of academia in the
Right.
process. So like I'll go visit them at their houses and stuff still and just chat with them, and they're so surly at this point. They're so choked that things are going the way they're going, but those ones, I mean, we really can't afford to lose that type of old school academic. They're so valuable, and we're not really producing them very much anymore. So I don't want that class of scholar to go away by any means. So I'm also not terribly anti-institution in this
Right.
case.
Yeah.
It's just I'm anti-contemporary manifestation of institution.
Right.
So,
We're gonna get to this because yeah, like I think it matters to your book that you put out, and I think it matters to us about the kind of the identity politics takeover, of these institutions. Like I think that's like the one thing people just are like, especially on like literature podcasts. Obviously, there's a few like that are in the same circles as mine that are like will talk about this stuff, but I think like in the mainstream ones
right.
there's you can't even mention it. You can't even be honest about what's happening. So I'm just I'm always curious about how writers kind of get pushed in a direction or whatever, because I think those academics that you're talking about, like they do lament this because their life's work is literally being ruined. They dedicated like
Uh-huh.
their
Yep.
entire life to this. They're in their 70s, like they've spent so much time trying to push this forward, and it just got ripped out from under them in this way. So I had a few kind of older professors that like once they were retiring, they were just started not giving a fuck, and we're just well, it's over. Like Harold Bloom, even towards the end of his life, was just kind of we lost the war. He was like, he's like, we lost that, it's over, like we lost.
Yeah.
um but yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I want to get to all that. But first, what got you into poetry in the first place? Because being kind of like an artsy, sensitive young man, going through college and stuff, you're kind of drawn to the artistic side of things, if not the rebellion aspect, and kind of, I think the deep emotional kind of beauty. You're kind of attuned to that more so than, let's say, somebody who doesn't want to major in this stuff. What got you into poetry specifically? Did you start with fiction? Did you start with kind of music, art? How did you get into poetry? Because I mean, that's not something people just like pick up and like, I'm going to be into poetry now. It's like a slow progression over years as you kind of are interested in literature and art. And how did you get into poetry?
Yeah, so in my case, I started with fiction. I had that typical sort of like epiphanic moment where you find a book that really resonates with you and you switch your course in life. I had one of those, and I've told the story before in other capacities, but that's what kind of started it, where I was set to go down a completely different career path, but something about just stumbling upon, I guess, what literature could be when you weren't forced to read it as a part of this sort of school system was, yeah, it was quite literally life-changing in this case. And so I wanted to be a novelist more than anything, and since I've become that, but it's poetry came I didn't read it for like the first 2 or 3 years that I was studying English lit. I really just didn't think much of it because the poetry that I was getting exposed to as a part of my undergrad, for example, was just quite let's say outdated.
Yeah, and it was post Canon Wars too. Like
Yeah.
people don't understand how much it was reformed in the 80s and 90s in terms of what they were pushing. Like kind of, yeah, you weren't reading. I mean, I guess they were still pushing like Eliot and stuff like that, but like only a few pieces. There's
Yeah.
just so many you're never. I mean, I try to cover them on this pod because there's so many that just aren't covered anymore that used to be pre Canon Wars. But yeah, I interrupted you. Yeah, please
No,
go
no,
on.
that's
Yeah.
totally fine. But yeah, I mean, to your point, that's exactly, I think, one of the problems I had with it. It was either just really old stuff that just I couldn't relate to, Spenserian sonnets and all that, or maybe it was one or two Eliot poems, or it was kind of like 20th century stuff from like minority poets that just didn't
Post
really,
1960s. Yeah.
yeah, it just didn't really do much for me. Like, probably wasn't the best representation of what 20th century poetry had to offer.
For
So
sure.
I just like, I just couldn't really connect with it that much. But what changed things for me was, and I was gonna, I guess, impart some of this in a Substack article I've got queued up for probably later today.
Nice.
I started buying poetry journals in 2019. Um, I would see them around at used bookstores and kind of like flip through them and go, I don't know about this.
Right.
But I just started picking a couple up just to sort of expand things out. And yeah, like I'd pick up magazines like Poetry is Dead and just
Yeah.
Poetry magazine itself, and all these, a mix of indie and establishment ones. And I'd read these and I'd go, on a line to line basis, these are actually more impressive than the novels that I've been reading. Like, novels will take you on a sort of emotional ride, and they have probably a greater capacity to stay with you longer just because of your emotional attachment to the characters and the plot line and all that. And so the novel can do things that poetry simply can't. Even full poetry collections sort of fail at
Right.
some of these. But yeah, on an individual line to line basis, poetry has got even, the best of novels licked, in my opinion, just because you see the sort of genesis point of so much, I guess, creation and innovation within poetry. There are just combinations you wouldn't really be able to put together unless you were writing like a surrealist kind of experimental novel. And so I would see these combinations being put together by these poets. I'm like, wow, I've never seen anyone phrase this kind of phenomenon this way. I've never seen this kind of, this combination of terms really ever before. This is so unique. But then it would be mired in like just this horrible kind of ideological nonsense. So I stuck with that for a little bit. I'd read here and there, and then I kind of got away from it. But poetry for me, I think you'll find like that as a writer, there are certain things that you're better at, certain forms you're better at. And poetry and prose are, I don't know how to sort of assess where I'm at currently. I can do both, but poetry is always, I think, just more exciting to write for me. I sit down, I want to do poetry usually because I think it's a snappier package. It's more freedom as a more experimental writer to just kind of throw it out there and then reshape it. I sometimes get bogged down in having to write dialogue and stuff. It's a little tedious. So the poetry journey, yeah, really just started with noticing how impressive these poets could be,
Right.
and then trying it myself, and kind of just sticking with it off and on throughout, yeah, like ever since 2019, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always interested just because it is kind of like it's always there, like even though it's like poetry is like the studied, less invested for the average person. Like, yeah, most people are just picking up, whatever, a bestseller or something and reading that, But
Yeah,
like the way people have these kind of you do kind of for me it was music. I always say like getting into lyrics and things like that, especially like good songwriters, like not just
yeah,
like rhyming pop songs. Although some of those pop songs have great lyrics, it's just like then I'm like I want more of this. I want more of these kind of meaningful kind of phrases tied together and like. And then you get into poetry and you're like, you see it and you're like, oh, wow. Like, yeah. And then it kind of starts to snowball. So I just love hearing writers' journey to that. Yeah. It's really this like poetry itself is I always say it is the most elegant in terms of written form. It's the most it's the most difficult because you have to squeeze it into this small little form. And then it's also just like the originality, like where fiction, because there's so much writing in a fiction work or even nonfiction, you can have some parts that kind of bump up and down, some peaks and valleys, right? Some boring parts, some really gripping parts, and it kind of bobs. But like for poetry, if you do that, like the whole poem kind of collapses. It has to be like a kind of a build on top of it. I don't know, just kind of like an elegant art form. Like if you can do that, you can write fiction. If you can do poetry, you can write nonfiction. Like if you can do this
yeah,
difficult art form, you can do the other ones too. And I think you're right. I mean, I think that's telling too in terms of like the novel is the newest kind of writing form that you could take in terms of, and poetry tends to be one of the most ancient for that too. Like it's been here so long. Um,
yeah.
Another question we like to ask for just to kind of establishing your background. Who are your idols in the literary world? Poetry writers, fiction writers, anything nonfiction. Who are your kind of literary idols that you would say? I know everybody has answers, but whoever, and anything goes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had other people ask me in particular which poets that I like, and it's hard to answer that because obviously I take such, an excoriating approach in certain respects. And so I've mentioned people like Ezra Pound and all of that just for more what they represent ideologically or in terms of their actual sort of methodology versus individual poems from them. Um, all your T.S. Eliot types and stuff like that. But there are so many active today
Yeah,
from the
too
poetry
many.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, too many, I argue. But um, the ones that are really good are they're so numerous I can't even pull their names out. I
Right.
just see them in the magazines over and over again. I go, oh, here's another one from so and so. Even the ones that I don't necessarily agree with at all in terms of what kind of ideas they're putting forth, the Michael Changs and stuff like that. I I just see them as being so talented that it almost supersedes my issues with their sort of subject matter. So yeah, the Robin Robertsons and stuff like that. I sort of parodied a little bit with one of the book reviews, calling him Bobbinson in this case, the Robin Bobbert Bobbinson guy. Um, because they hate him and sort of more traditional poets like that. But Robin Robertson, I always fuck up his name. It might even be something else at this point. I've mixed it up with my fake version so many times. But if you want someone with traditional, let's say, aesthetics, but who's still active today and it hasn't really compromised on that, I would say he's the prime example. Um, and if you look him up on, like, say, Poetry Magazine's website, there'll be probably like 12 or 14 of his poems that you can sort of sample for yourself. But, guys like that are still around. They're just like those old professors that I mentioned that are kind of being phased out, but they had so much success early on, you can't really deny them anymore.
Right.
So those guys I really admire. There are even poets local to me that have gotten book deals and stuff like that that I quite admire. They just fly a little under the radar because they're a little bit more on the traditional side. I can't list them by name because then they're gonna get choked at me. But um, you know, so for poetry, it's a giant mix. Even, yeah, if you're doing it well, basically, no matter what you're writing about, I'll find something to like in it. But yeah, if you're a jobber writing about, I don't know, a Syrian person trying ice cream for the first time, I'm just not, it's just not going to do much for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is interesting too because there is like, there's an aesthetic, and I think that like I'm one of those people too that I can appreciate things even if I don't like them. I can appreciate, yeah, like the talent, the lines, the structure, like the things that are working well in the stuff. Maybe that's workshop brain, or I think it's just like you're appreciating the art. Like this is the art, and you're not a huge fan of what they're doing or whatever, but you can you appreciate like the work that they put into this because you can see it on the page.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always just like to ask, yeah, fiction, poets, anything like that, and I go all over the place with this stuff too. Like I love Nick Flynn in terms of contemporary stuff. I like his poetry much better than his nonfiction, even though I know he's more famous for his nonfiction. But he's been on the show too, so shout out Nick Flynn. I know he probably doesn't listen, but yeah, there's yeah.
No, that's cool.
Kaki Wilkinson, she's doing cool shit. She's doing really cool poetry, and it's much more traditional rhyme scheme, meter, very uniform, structured, but she's doing cool kind of stories. Her book that I always recommend to people to check out is the Winona Stone Poems. Was her first big breakthrough, and actually Lena Dunham blurbed it for her, which is crazy that somebody like, yeah, Lena Dunham was blurbing poetry books, but still,
Yeah.
that's yeah, she does great stuff. Yeah, and I mean, and then all the classics, yeah, like I love Frank O'Hara. I love. I'll throw Stephen King in there as somebody that inspires me, or I admire his work ethic, his output, even his style. Even though sometimes it's very corny and kind of dad joke, stuff. Like I just think there's something in there. I agree with you. There's something in a lot of these, even if they're pop novels, even if they're, I just did it's not out yet, but I just did a Clancy book with a guest. I'm not a huge Clancy fan or anything, but I feel like, he was such a monumental figure in the culture. He influenced literature, even however small, writing these military spy thrillers or whatever. Like, it was still an influence on people writing and reading and the culture at large, and movie making now too, like all of that. But I love seeing that. Yeah. And I think music, great songwriters can throw in there too. Same type of thing. But yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in terms of songwriters here, actually.
Let's hear it. Go. Yeah.
and I just wrote down your recs. I'll check them out.
Nice.
Well, because I'm always looking for new stuff. I'm always looking for new angles. This is totally an aside, but Bob
please.
Dylan, Nobel laureate for literature. Where do we fall on that? What are you thinking?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've actually have several rants on the show about this. Yeah, I'm against it. Yeah, I'm against it. That happened when I was in grad school, and I'm not a huge Dylan guy. Maybe that has something to do with it. But for me, I was just so irritated that I think it's an example of how low we've fallen in terms of calling that literature. It's great art. Like, I call it great art, but to call it literature just means that everybody's confused. Everybody's so confused about what literature is, what poetry is. Although a lot of he's great lyrics. A lot of those lyrics are great writing. I'm just like, man, couldn't we give him the prize for music? There's so many writers that could have deserved that for literature, that have done such an impact on this. Didn't Kendrick get it for music?
Oh yeah, he won like a Pulitzer or something.
Okay, so the Nobel they don't give for music or something, right? Like, it's.
Yeah, and I saw that. I'm like, all right, guys, we're entering into dark territory here in terms of our awards and shit.
At least it was for music and not for, like the literature and stuff like that, because that's what he's doing. He's making music. He's making music, and he takes it serious. And I'm a Kendrick fan. Like, I like Kendrick's work. But I'm always just like, all right, at least give it for like what he's actually working in. And even Dylan like kind of like didn't acknowledge that stuff. So yeah, I'm against it. But yeah, your thoughts on Dylan getting the Nobel laureate?
Yeah, I mean, I heard that on the radio. I think I was like driving home from like an ex-girlfriend's house, and I heard that. I'm like, no, you can't be serious here. We're giving fucking Bob Dylan the Nobel Prize in Lit. Like, come on. And I looked up some of his older poetry that night, and it's like, it's fine.
Right.
It's just fine. It's like B tier poetry about being like a sensitive young man. I'm like, that's all right, but like, you shouldn't be even sniffing a Nobel Prize with this shit. Like, like, this we could simulate in like pretty easily. I could get his style down and probably mimic it in like a day. So it's I thought it was fun. I find it funny now, but I was in those days before I'd gotten all of this, I was just fucking pissed. Like
yeah. That's the other early stage when you start to have that realization, like the anger comes in, the disenfranchisement, maybe, let's say, or just kind of that feeling rejected kind of from the art that you love, like you feel rejected. So then anger comes in, and then, you kind of get acceptance. You go through like the stages of grief. Yeah, absolutely. That's, and then are you a Ginsberg guy at all, or?
Ginsberg, I used to really dislike the Beat Generation. I think I was more of a modernist.
I hate the Beats. Yeah.
Yeah.
I obviously Ginsberg's the only beat worth remembering. But yeah, please go on. Yeah.
like I used to have this just kind of like visceral reaction to hearing about the beats and shit, and I just go like, oh, these guys are just bad modernists. They're just like lazy modernists.
Right.
Um,
Drug
and
journals and yeah, yeah.
yeah, and like I mean, I go back now and I appreciate what they were doing. You know, the Fairleigh and stuff like that. Like they were trying different things. I associate the 50s, but definitely the 60s with like basically every bad cultural movement we've ever had, like in the West. Like every fucking bad institution and stuff like that was mostly rooted in that. Like if you exclude the Frankfurt School and everything, but like just all the bad cultural shifts. Some of them, of course, we look back and like, yeah, that was the right thing to do and everything. But it was more just the origins of them when you dig into the history behind them, who funded what, and all this sort of CIA involvement and everything. Not to sound too
Right.
conspiratorial, but I mean, it's really just documented fact. And then they just release the statements like 50 years down the line. Go, oh yeah, we totally fucking manipulated that thing. So I just associate a lot of the current cultural ills with their origin points sometimes in the 60s. And so the Beat Generation is basically the literary movement of that time. And I go, oh, like I just read it with a weird sense of like, I don't know, disdain. But that said, I mean, I've gone back and I've read Kerouac, I've read, even just the sort of tangential guys that kind of get swept under the rug from that time period. And I mean, they were on to something anyway. like
Yeah.
they like Howell is, as much as I really hate the drug culture type stuff in lit and the weird Nambla shit from Ginsberg, like that was fucking terrible. I make a joke about the e-boy Nambla in this because there's like a pedophile type writer in the magazine. Like, yeah, like fucking Ginsberg was like a monster as a person. I don't agree with anything he did personally, but Howell is actually legitimately excellent.
It's incredible.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really a triumph. But and a couple of Kerouac's books, um, now that I've understood his life a bit better,
Well,
I can see as being triumphs as well. So
yeah,
the rest of the Beat Generation, though, yeah, missed me with that.
his best is the Dharma Bums, isn't that Kerouac?
Oh yeah, yeah, I bought that in Mexico actually.
Yeah, that's his best. Yeah, I think that's his best work. And
Yeah,
I'm not super educated on all of them. I've read them because yeah, when you come up as a kind of a sensitive young man, especially in the '90s, I think we're both millennials. You come up with that, and it's so cool. And I imagine in the '50s, it was probably very shocking. It was probably much more shocking than it was reading it in the '90s. Where we've had kind of Gen X come through and do this kind of even more shocking stuff than the Beats did and all that. When
yeah,
I was reading it, yeah, you and I were reading it, coming to it so many years later. But yeah, like I agree, and the reason I brought up Ginsberg just because like I feel like Dylan and Ginsberg are kind of go hand in hand in terms of that time period, the kind of revolutionary time period. But I always say, yeah, Ginsberg's the only beat worth remembering, and then the other caveat is Ginsberg's best work was his first book. How was his best work, and
yeah.
then it kind of you can see it kind of he got a little too political, and it kind of clouded out what he was doing with that. At least in that first book. But yeah, I'm always
Absolutely.
curious. No, please go on. Yeah, if you have.
Yeah, he was just he got so political and got so wrapped up in like really just fucked up things.
Yeah,
And I think it did taint his work. I mean, I've read his personal letters from when he went to India and stuff like that. And I mean, it's like I guess it would have been like diary entries and things of that sort. And just I mean, it's clear that he was in possession of like real, genuine talent. You can always tell by someone's even personal writings what they've got going on internally, like what kind of level of sophistication they operate at, even when they're sort of at leisure. And for me, that's always the mark of someone, yeah, who's just like a true genius. Is no matter they're always on.
right.
So I don't use the word too often, but I hate Ginsburg. Like I fucking hate Ginsburg. But he was really good, and and a lot of them were on that tier, Kerouac and stuff like that. So I don't think to read them very often because I associate them with a lot of bad things. But
Right. Yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting, like the schools that we move through, like through time, and obviously trends have stuff to do with this. Politics has stuff to do with this. Outside forces other than just the art. Like there's all kinds of things that start to affect. And then we call them schools in academia, but like it's just a convenient way to kind of separate the genre and style and kind of trends at the time. Like it's always just interesting how that plays out. I think we're living through something like that now, where it's kind of like a clusterfuck of culture and trends and politics that are all getting smashed into the poetry, and it's just making the poetry suck. But yeah, that's I don't want to get too sidetracked on Ginsberg because I want to get into like all your book and all and the actual hoax process of all this too. But I wanted to ask why the pen name? Why publish under a pen name? Why not use your real name or anything like that?
yeah. I mean, well, for the experiment part, the pen names were crucial to it, and for this one, like I could have put it out under my name, and I thought about it, but it's more I have a, let's say, public facing job, um, a couple, and you know, I know that people like to dox and do all that sort of
Right.
shit these days and whatever else, and I don't really care, frankly. Like, it is what it is. When you live the way I have for the last however many years, like you realize that it really isn't that big a deal if it happens. You kind of I'm ready to own up to whatever I've done. Like it's not a huge concern. I'll stand by it, but um, yeah, I don't know. Like I like the concept of pen names in general, and I've used them over the years in several different capacities. And I think down the line, I'd like to amalgamate everything. So just like I mentioned with I always forget his name. He became Paul Smale and Daniel Hiedat and all that. I mentioned him in the afterword. I always forget his original name, but he was the French author, and I mentioned him in one of the fake poems where I basically admit to being a fake persona, the Plenitude one under Adele. He used like 5 different pen names over his career before he was outed, and I just found it was kind of funny because you can mark your eras that way, and then down the line you just amalgamate everything as you. And that was you exploring different forms, you exploring different subject matter, um, and yeah, so I just figured I'd keep it going for
Yeah.
this for now, and then once everything sort of settles elsewhere, I'll just sort of bring them together, and it'll be like a really cool, weird portfolio, like a vaguely schizophrenic portfolio of my my work over the years. So yeah, I just figured it'd be fun, honestly,
Yeah.
more than anything.
The reason I asked is because I didn't know if there was any fear. Yeah, like you mentioned for your career or anything like that, right? Because I think the people that would say that that's not a problem or that that's not happening, they would dismiss this very real thing where it's very rational to be afraid right now of what some of these psychos could do because of something like this. Even just submitting fake. It's not even like you did anything, right? Like you wrote these fake poems, submitted them under pen names, and they published it. You didn't have to publish. Like they didn't have to do
Yeah.
this. Yeah, like But then somehow like there would be backlash, and granted it's poetry, so not like it's be a huge backlash because it's poetry, but it would be. Careers have been ruined over less, let's say. Like there's
Oh yeah.
reputations, livelihoods, tenured professors. This have been ruined over much less. Over much less. I was
Yeah.
at grad school, watched this happen during the heat of it. 2017-ish. White male professor, middle-aged guy, well respected in the MFA. Has a bunch of books. Got forced out. I watched it happen, and his reaction was, one, he didn't know what was happening at first, and then it was kind of fury. He was very betrayed and stuff like that, and of course that was used against him. And oh, why are you getting mad that we're ruining your life? Like kind of thing.
Yeah.
How dare you get mad at us ruining your life for this dumb reason? But yeah, I didn't know if that was part of it or not, because I think there is a denial, especially in the literary world. Maybe not so much in the circles we run in or stuff like that, but there is a denial, I think, in the mainstream of what can happen, the risk you do take on if you were to say something about this or make a point, even artistically, like you did with an art project. Making this point of the state of poetry and how kind of laughable it is. I don't know. I was just curious if that was any motivation at all behind it, or just an artistic project choice, or
Right. Yeah. I mean,
little
I think,
both. Yeah.
yeah, probably a little bit of both. I mean, I really don't mind being confronted on these things. And I mean, it's been funny looking at the reactions. I mean, on X and stuff like that. I'm
Yeah.
not terribly active on X or anything, but one of the editors in particular took exception to being duped. And she's been going pretty crazy, like emailing me and all this sort of shit, but posting these big rants on X, and she's got like 10,000 followers for a
Right.
magazine. So, like, people are seeing this, and I'm getting contacted by random fucking entities and all this sort of stuff
Yeah.
about it.
The they thems coming at you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I haven't gotten too much hate mail yet, which is nice, but it's more just like there's been I've created already a kind of schism in the community
Yeah.
on a minor scale, and I hope it expands because it's worthwhile. It's a conversation we need to have, but so they've created like a whisper network. That's their new approach, and she hinted at it in her X rants. But or I guess, yeah, Chris Talbot Heindel or whatever, they hinted at it. So yeah, so Chris is like posted this email response that I offered because I got emailed with this fucking thing, and I haven't even responded to the other one Chris sent me. It was just fucking essay about how shitty I am and all this. Like, I've been holding off for a couple days. I just read this over. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of text. I'm not sure I want to read that. But they've created this whisper network.
Oh yeah.
You can probably hear my dog barking in the
Oh
background.
no,
there.
we love that. Yeah, we love background noise. Yeah, ambiance makes it more real. I feel more parasocial for people. You can know what our dogs sound like, and you hear my daughter crying. It's much more parasocial fun for people.
Yeah, she loves to go crazy every now and again, but yeah. So I guess with these whisper networks, they don't like to fess up to really anything publicly.
Right.
They'd rather just keep it under wraps and like not acknowledge what's going on. They just quietly delete content.
Yes. And that's been happening for more than just stuff where you're purposely kind of doing an art project to mock it, That's happened to just people that are just submitting their seriously crafted stuff, because of some tweet or something. That's happening at a huge scale. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're basically getting your stuff kind of just scrubbed, and it kind of dies without a fight, which is really sad. So, I mean, yeah, if my stuff's going to get scrubbed, which it already has been from a few places, like I don't know if you'll be able to find the Plenitude one pretty soon. And the BK one is already gone. Like if you read the PDF issue, there's just a bunch of black censor bars and stuff where Adele was.
Oh my god!
She didn't want to repaginate, so.
I wasn't aware of that, but it makes sense. Of course, that's what the response is to people that are getting. I mean, okay, let's be. They probably feel betrayed in some way, right? Like it was, you didn't do it in good faith or something. But it was like, no, like people would bring up like the JT Leroy stuff, right? Like the kind of the great literary hoaxes that we've kind of lived through, with this. The people fawn over this stuff, and then they get mad that you kind of made an example of it. Which, okay, that's a normal human reaction. Of course, you're going to be upset. You feel like you were taken advantage of or made a fool of. You knew that was coming, yeah. But then, like, to go so far as to where, like, instead of just letting it kind of roll away and then the next thing come along, quietly. They make the effort to black out a page in the thing so that it
Yeah.
becomes like a question when people are reading through it now. It like becomes a thing. It's like you're almost making it worse. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious about it because I think there is a denial. There is a denial about this happening. There's a denial that certain things are picked for political reasons and not artistic ones or anything like that. And I'm thinking, who was the guy? I think it was a few years ago. I was in grad school. Was it like 2017, 2018? That white guy, he put this kind of like poem into a couple different submissions, and he did it under several different names. So he did. I think it was about like ancient China or something, and he did it under his own name, didn't get accepted. Did it under like kind of a woman's name, didn't get accepted. Then he did it under like an Asian or Chinese name,
Yeah,
and
you're
it
thinking
got
of
accepted
Michael.
right away. Yeah.
Yeah. You're thinking of Michael Derrick Hudson, I think.
Yes. And I remember Chen had like this screeching screed in Lit Hub and stuff about it when it came out, and like all of this stuff about how it's terrible, it's this abuse. But I'm like, no, like it's. I think that was the one thing. Do you follow Sherman Alexie at all and his kind of Substack and stuff? He's kind of this. You can tell he's of the ilk that's like he's not quite buying like the current thing that's going
Right.
on, but he's kind of grandfathered in because he was this huge American literary figure, in the 90s and into the early 2000s and stuff. And he kind of, you could see it in his writing and stuff that was kind of his moment because he was the judge that picked that one. And he admitted
Right.
during it that the Chinese name is what made him do it right away.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he kind of had this kind of, let's call it a mea culpa, where he was kind of like, maybe I did kind of buy into this too much and I wasn't thinking about the poem, but I was thinking about the identity politics angle of it. So I don't know, just interesting that like, people like that still exist. And I think, yeah, he's gotten some shit for it. Although again, he's still kind of grandfathered into the world there. But yeah, I just, the pen names, because it will come back to you. This stuff will come back. And I don't know. I get frustrated by it because I think there is like this massive denial on stuff, and that's why I ask because do you have an academic career you're protecting, publishing, stuff like that, and I want to talk to you about publishing and all that too as we move along here.
Right. And
But please,
in relation to Michael Derrick Hudson, actually, yeah, that's one of the main figures that inspired this. And I mention him in the afterword specifically because he sent things out as himself. It was his famous bees poem. Um, and yeah, he got rejected. I think it was like 40 times or something for
yeah,
this. And it was a good poem. Like it really shouldn't have gotten rejected from
right. Even the
even.
minor journals that were rejected. Yeah,
Oh yeah, like the minor journals should have jumped at this because it was well done. But he switched to I always mess up the name. I think it was Yi Chen, or Yi Fei. Um, and yeah, he got it scooped up like almost immediately, and then it was anthologized in Best American Poetry by Sherman Alexie and the gang. And then yeah, he had to basically out himself, and then he got fucking roasted. He just got absolutely destroyed. Um, and yeah,
that's real.
I saw,
Yeah. Like
yeah,
it's not irrational to be afraid of that. Like, it's real. Like, that's going to happen. Yeah, like very
definitely.
real. Yeah.
And it's so hard to like his stuff got scrubbed. Like if you
Right.
look up his old poetry, a lot of it's just 404 bad gateways and all that. He did though, honestly, it was really funny. I was looking to see if he had published anything since under his name. I don't know if he assumed another pen name or something and whatever, but he did get a poem published about maybe 6 months ago in like an okay journal, and it was a good poem. It was something about unicorns or whatever, but um I was reading this. I'm like, wait, this is new. Like, he's still doing it. Holy shit, he's back. And I emailed the journal because I'm like, wow, an endorsement from Michael Derrick Hudson would be the funniest shit in the world for this. So I emailed the journal. I'm like, hey, do you have his contact info? He's so hard to find. Like, I'm trying to reach out to him about a project. They never got back to me. And then he works at a library somewhere in the States. And I was gonna reach out to the library and just go, "Hey, can I have your archivists or whatever curators email? I need to email about something special." But yeah, I wanted an endorsement so bad from Michael Derek Hudson. That would have been the funniest shit possible. But yeah, I simulated what he did basically on a
Yeah.
bigger scale. Um, and I specifically threw in with the Ern Malley portion a Michael Derek Hudson portion where I sent it was I believe it was with 6 poems. I sent them out as, white male guy first, racked up a bunch of rejections because obviously they're gonna view that stuff a little bit more critically. Um, and then I switched to one of the pen names, Adele or BH Fine or whomever, and they would get scooped up immediately, like
Right.
1 or 2 attempts. It'd be like 26 failures versus one, and then an acceptance, or 14 and then immediate acceptance as a pen name. So I did that too, just to prove that, like, yeah, even with just like mediocre poems or whatever, you can get them picked up so much faster under any sort of other identity but this one. Um, it's a night and day difference,
Right.
frankly. Even the rejections I was receiving, or the like notification type emails of like, hey, we're doing a submission call, we'd really like you to sort of send something in. If they sent it to white mail address, it was, hey, we're looking for subs, send something. Whereas if it was like Adele, it'd be like, hey Adele, we just wanted to let you know that we're open for subs, and something from you would be great. We'd love to have you try your hand at this. I'd be like, what the fuck? Even the generic like copy and paste, they're giving the better ones to these fucking fake personas. This is unreal.
Yeah. And this is a
So
perfect way to go into it too, because yeah, this is kind of like this project specifically, I think, and this is why I want to kind of create a timeline too. Kind of, you spent so much time doing this and kind of just laying out like, yeah, what you saw, how this things like this. Yeah, 40 submissions with the one name and then like 2 with the other, and you're getting, published, not even just like a rejected like response faster. You're just getting it out there. But like, all right, so like about this project, like pitch it to listeners here. Ecolala, right? Or Ecolalia?
yeah,
What the fuck is that? And why? Yeah. What motivated this? Tell me about the project. How did it get started? Like what motivated this to like start, right? Like, I know we've been going into it a little bit already, so yeah, but
sure. Yeah. So yeah, Echolalia Review, an anti-poetry collection, is half fake poetry journal. The front end is sequenced exactly like a poetry journal you'd buy at whatever sort of store. So everything from obviously poems, interviews, advertisements for other journals, fake bios, fake essays, book reviews. But all of that content, save for, the book reviews and a couple of things, the interviews, have been published in journals all over the world. But they were sent out as or under pen names of attractive backgrounds, let's say. So the poems themselves are absolute junk. They run the full gamut of every style that you would see today in contemporary poetry, and all the subject matter, from disability stuff to gimmicky limericks to, you name it, anti-gun pieces framed as Amazon ads. Like, it's just this very bizarre menagerie of bad poetry. But it's all been accepted as legitimate poetry, so it exists in the world as real stuff. So that's the sort of Ern Malley portion, to a certain degree, where I took inspiration from Macaulay and Stewart down in Australia and how they took down Angry Penguins, the magazine there. So that first half is the fake journal portion, and then the second half is more literary criticism, with a couple creative nonfiction pieces thrown in to kind of satirize the industry as a whole. So my publication notes sort of explain my reasoning in certain cases, and they give you all the background details of what got accepted where, and how much effort it took, or how easy it was, that kind of stuff. and I've got an afterward portion that kind of really lays out the full scope of the ruse just for good measure, and kind of is a mini manifesto as to how we could improve the conditions of the poetry industry going forward. So I called it Echolalia Review just because, of course, we know the term echo chamber and stuff like that, but I found poetry to be so repetitive. My one huge gripe with it is just the sheer repetition now. Like it just becomes this weird beast where it's just the same thing over and over again. So I thought something that communicated this kind of repetitive factor was really what I was going to go for here. So, yeah, the book even looks like a literary journal on the outside as well. So, yeah, it's a very strange meta modern package.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this a little bit via email. That kind of, yeah, I am thinking of the grievance studies hoax. What was that?
Yeah.
2016, 2017. Listeners that are unfamiliar, these group of academics, and they all documented this. This was all very well documented. I think they even one guy, a filmmaker, made a documentary about it following it. If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard. It was, I might not know all the names, James Lindsay, Peter Boghossian, Helen Pluckrose, and I think a few others. And these are kind of what the internet would call IDW figures, or intellectual dark web figures. Basically people that were in academia, seeing what was going on, and wanted to expose it. So they did this same thing that Jasper's doing, but they did it with academic papers in kind of sham fields, a lot of sociology fields, feminist studies, and things like that, where they just submitted fake papers and did the same. It had the same thing happen that had to Jasper, but it got accepted. Not only did it get accepted, it was getting nominated for awards and stuff like that. And then they came out with it, oh, it was all fake. And yeah, everybody was really pissed off. And I think it did ruin a couple careers because of that. Yeah. But the point they made is the same. I mean, like it is. So I love that this is what you're doing for literature in our field here, because this is, I don't know. I mean, this is the question. You know, what motivated this? Was it just you were sick of seeing it, like the disenfranchisement, the kind of, I mean, yeah, like what motivated, because this was a huge project that took you multiple years to do, you know, what motivated you to take on something like this at this scale? You know, it wasn't like you just did, a couple poems, you know, and like laughed or like whatever, made a X post or Twitter post about it. It was like, no, you took like a serious years-long project, put a book out with it, documenting all of it, how it went down. So yeah, what motivated this to do it? Was it just kind of, I don't know, like I'm sick of it. I need to do something, or yeah, what motivated it? Or just having a little fun.
Yeah, it was kind of a bit of everything, actually.
Yeah.
I was buying so many of these poetry magazines, and I was getting into them as quote unquote myself. So it's not like I wasn't having that much success, but it's more that I was running up against roadblocks, and I noticed that there was really no way I was going to get into the Paris Review, no way I was going to get into even like Poetry Magazine or anything like that, because I wasn't writing things that were considered acceptable. And I would have to actually, as I was writing a poem, have to like assume this kind of halfway state where you kind of, I don't know, just water down whatever you really want to say. And it just felt awful to do it. I
Right.
hated it. I would show my girlfriend at the time some poems here and there. She'd be like, oh, this one feels a lot like you. I'd be like, yeah, they're never going to take this. And then she'd be like, this one doesn't, I don't know about this one. And that would be the one that they would take. And so I got really fed up because I'm like, if I'm feeling this way, I know other people are out there. And if you're cutting off a contingent of poets just wholesale, you're not gonna get, I mean, the when we look back at this era of poetry, we're not gonna understand how people truly felt.
Right.
It's not gonna be representative of what was going on at the time. And that seemed like a bit of a tragedy because, yeah, you're wiping out so many different types of valuable and even instructive experiences from people that are just considered inconvenient in some way or another. Um, like the struggles, say, with not to get too political or anything like that, but
Oh, you
you know,
can if you want. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, like, the struggles with multiculturalism, for example, and stuff. It's just it in certain parts of the world, it's just not working. Like, it's
Hmm.
causing strife for everyone involved, not just the sort of native populations, let's say. Like, there's a lot of discomfort around topics like that, and you cannot express anything related to that. You can't go, all right, well, actually, all these stabbings in like the UK are not good, guys. I'm gonna write a poem about this. They would fucking crucify you for even
Right.
trying to do that. So, I just thought, well, poetry has become co-opted for the usual, you know, purposes, let's say. And it was disappointing. It was really disappointing. I felt like it was really not going to, yeah, be emblematic of anything of real value in a complete sense. So I'm like, all right, what can I do about this? And I heard about the grievance studies at FAIR. I heard about all these other sort of hoaxes and everything. I'm like, even as a one-man team, I think I could do this. I think this sounds like kind of like fun. I don't mind playing the villain,
Right.
let's say, because one of the articles I have sort of queued up is the value of the villain role in contemporary literature. And you don't have to be an actual villain, like you hate people and
Right.
you just want to see them suffer. Like, I don't think that's a righteous villain. That's not what I'm going for. A true sort of valuable villain in this case is someone who has a a sort of concept of what would actually benefit the majority of people, would sort of steer us toward living well, and would steer us toward a saner society. And so that kind of villain in today's world has to be a villain because they're going to receive so much pushback from the sort of apparatuses in place and everything. So that was the type of role I wanted to assume with this, and very, very few are willing to do that
Right.
from what I've seen. As soon as they get pushed back, they fold.
Yeah.
So you
And
got to have guts.
yeah, and I the reason I asked the question too is because I just wanted everybody to know that, like, yeah, like the kind of what motivating this, people would say it's this like evil motivation, but it's actually an admiration and deep passion and love for the craft that motivated it, like, instead, not this like, oh, I want to fuck with people, although there probably is some of that, have some fun. But it's like, no, like this is motivated by a passion and kind of like a way of ringing an alarm bell, like a kind of like, look at what's happening, like, look at how easy this was. Yeah, like I feel like, I mean, I'm sure you've gotten it already, like you said, with some of these journals and editors and things. But I wanted to really kind of establish that. Even I think like the grievance studies hoax, that was motivated by them, like because they were serious and passionate and cared about their field, of study and stuff. Like, it wasn't some, we're trying to hurt people. It was, look at this. Like, how can we be okay with this? How can you love this field, this art form, and then be okay with what's happening?
Yeah.
Uh, and I do want to lay out a little bit of a timeline here for everyone listening. Kind of like a record created, like, especially like the awards and the contests, that like the entry timeline. Can we name names of these journals? Or, we don't want to put anybody on blast unnecessarily. What was the first one that you like? Did it start as just kind of an experiment with a couple poems? Like, what was the first kind of moment where you're like, oh, this is going to be a large project?
Right. So I, at the time, was living with a girl who was, let's say, vaguely African, right? And she would always get like these weird comments, and I mentioned this. I think it was on the yeah, it wasn't Black Ibis that I talked about this one. This was the Book Club from Hell one.
Oh,
Love
right. Yeah.
those guys, by the way.
Shout out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Jack for facilitating all of that as well, and Levi for coming on to that. I really like talking to those guys. Subscribe to those guys; they're fun as hell. But yeah, so I guess yeah, she would get like weird comments all the time from people like, oh, they'd be like everywhere we went, they'd want to like touch her hair and do this like weird shit. And like, we had like a comedy club and they'd be like, we'd sit down, they'd be like, wow, I love your hair so much. Like, oh, oh, can I feel it kind of shit. I'm like, dude, they act really weird around you.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I'm getting it a lot these days. I don't know. Like people are kind of they're drinking the Kool-Aid a lot. I'm just a person. I'm like, I know, like you're just you. And I I I I saw that with like poets and stuff. They would like fawn over people in the same way. Like, no, these are just people, but you're putting them on this sort of strange ideological pedestal. It's not good for them and it's not good for you. Um, it just causes a really odd psychological imbalance. And so I thought, I'm like, it'd be really funny if I wrote a poem as who they think you are. And let's just see what they do with this one. And so I wrote the Yaja Gaha one, which is just fake, like Creole pidgin English, not done well. Like um, I just kind of like sound it out in my head. I'd be like, yeah, they'd probably say it this way. I looked up a few YouTube videos of people speaking Creole. I'm like, good enough. So I tried to do like this sort of like new age miniature sonnet type form in like broken iambic pentameter and also Creole. And for that one, I have it here. I can at least read part of it for your listeners here. So I put a Toni Morrison quote in front of this one. It was, navigating a white male world was not threatening. It wasn't even interesting. I was more interesting than they were. I knew more than they did, and I wasn't afraid to show it. And so the poem, anyway, is flit, crit, stit, writ me into mystic. Hinge match want give me his white dick. Say no, mister, he say no, give. Like am Queen of the Caribbean. Speak in pidgin, yeah, speak real idjit. Voodoo practic, castor oil drip. No get I like Shakespeare Othello. Chagall, Basquiat, Dvorich, Be-Law, Woman, Goal Watch, Wrist. Only want wife go master, yes. Fliss crit, flit crit, stit writ, dis bitch into mystic. Soon find out, make fresh blooms go fist. So it's centered on the page and it looks ridiculous. So largely the idea here is a black woman complaining about how white people perceive her as being this like voodoo practicing castor oil wearing Othello character. But like I threw in stuff that just made no sense. So like I guess she's gonna be a law woman, a lawyer or something in the future, but they think she's just meant to be ruled over by white people. But yeah, so Chagall obviously exists as an artist. Basquiat, they always associate Chagall, Basquiat, these types. But Dvorich doesn't even exist. That's not even a real person. Like there's Dvorak, the composer, but I just started throwing in like random fucking people who don't even exist as reference points. A lot of this is just like, it's just nonsense. And yeah, this was published in Tofu Arts Inc. Press. That was the first one we got accepted. And I remember, like, I basically like woke her up. It was the traditional like, "Hey babe, wake up! This thing happened," fucking meme, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" They fell for it. She's like, "No way, no way." So we went out and we took pictures. Like I wanted like a silhouette because they asked for like a bio and all that stuff. I had to throw together pretty quickly, and like a picture of her and everything. And she's like, "Yeah, I'll pose, like whatever." So we did like a silhouette picture, and like that became the thing. But in the picture, we in the apartment there, we had a like an old garbage room, let's say, or like where you'd put. I guess it was a chute to go down to the underground, but it still had the garbage plate on the sort of thing. So I took a picture of her under the garbage plate just to like signify like this is bad content. They're like, "Wow, this is a really funny picture. Like we love it." I'm like, "Oh yeah, you do, don't you?" Um,
Yeah, they ate it up. I remember listening to this, and I mean, I'm not a fan of poets like Donna Smith or anything, but I remember he did this interview during his kind of peak of, again, during all this time here, like 2016-ish era, where he was on a podcast and he said, like, he described what you're talking about, where he said like these white people would come up to him at like readings and things. And again, he's totally identity politics, like bought into that stuff and all that. But I mean, even just saying I'd probably get eviscerated for this. I think it's like a they, them, or whatever
right.
a rule that you have to follow when you refer to Donna as. But he just said, like, he had these poems in that one book about like fantasies of killing white people or whatever. And he said white people would come up to him at readings and they would be like, "Oh, those are my favorite." Like, and he said he would look at him and be like, "Really?" He'd be like, those are your favorites?"
God damn.
It's this ethos that I think, and people are denying this. Like, it's there. Like, and it is well intentioned. Like, people are like, "Oh, well, we want to give everybody a shot," but then they're like so obsessed with this shit that like they're not seeing what's actually happening here. So that's, I mean, yeah. Please go on, please.
No, for sure. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah,
No.
I've noticed the exact same thing. It's like it's actually directed towards you, and it's negative. Like they don't like you. They're advocating for your actual harm, and you're going, "Wow, that's really insightful. Like I love what you're doing." It's like, fucking wake up. Like,
It's the "we're going to fucking kill you" meme, right? Like the
yeah.
with the fire eyes or whatever.
Yeah, it's so sad. It's so bizarre. Like you can appreciate the fact that they at least have the freedom to do this, and that there might be historical gripes that they have with, say, particular groups and stuff like that, and you're a part of that group, so take it on the chin, I guess. And but when it gets to the point where, yeah, you're basically fawning over people who actively despise you, you've gone so far off the deep end. I don't even know where to start with you. Like you can obviously start by making a project like this, but that speaks to a deeper kind of psychological distress that, I mean, I as one individual can't address. But yeah, it's embarrassing. Like, man, have some. I read this in the afterword for male poets. Like, have some fucking stones, basically.
Yeah.
Like, you can appreciate freedom of speech, this or that, but like, yeah, when they're actively coming after you, and you got to stand your ground here. You got to have some gall, some guts, because otherwise you're just gonna get walked all over. And then we create an industry like this.
Yeah, and it's also just like, get a fucking grip, dude. Like, like you're fawning over the shit. Like, okay, like, yeah, we get it. Like, is the poem any good? Like, we get what you're trying. And then I get that, and this is an endless debate and all that with the kind of the in-group signaling, the kind of the term luxury beliefs, the term that if you claim to believe this one thing, it offers you, access to an institution or to publication or something like that. You kind of had to say the lines. You had to repeat what the mantra was in order to signal that, in that particular case, like, I'm one of the good ones, or like don't take it out on me, I'm one of the good ones. Yeah, and I mean, that's, like you said, that's a huge cultural thing that, yeah, like, even a project like this can only make barely a dent in, but it's still, I think it is a huge part of the literary culture now. It is what the literary culture is. Like, there are, like, these little pockets, these little niches that aren't that, sure, and maybe and they're getting some play now, sure, but like, the majority of the literary world is that culture. It is kind of, I call it the DNC rubric.
Yeah.
People get pretty pissed at me. Like, I went on a podcast once, and it was more mainstream, kind of poetry podcast. In that, I mean, by mainstream listeners, I don't mean popular. I mean literally, like, in poetry, like,
Sure.
and but anyway, I could tell just the way they contacted me. They were a little hesitant. They were a little nervous, like,
Mm-hmm.
they were a little like, we don't know what you're going to say, like, cause I get it. Like, they're worried about their audience backlash, right? Cause there's going to be, like,
Mm.
for having somebody like me on who is, I think, tells the truth, where it's just like, no, let's acknowledge that this is the culture right now. And this is what you're seeking. You're not necessarily seeking good work. You're seeking this other thing here, this political thing, this, in-group signaling, well, let's say, or the luxury beliefs that everybody calls it online now. The wokeness. All right, everybody's, oh, woke. What is wokeness? That's what we're talking about, listeners. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, the whole time I was just thinking to myself, like, man, like, you guys are just straight up denying that this is happening, right? Like, because
Yeah.
and I've heard you talk about this even on some podcast appearances where there's, you worked in publishing for some time and all that. And I think, like, yeah, I was in grad school. I went through these things. I sat in editorial meetings where this was explicitly stated, not like, oh, we're by beating around the bush or we're hinting at it. It is stated like, explicitly, like,
Yeah.
there is a metric and you can't have this many, you have to have this many white males, you have to have this many, black women or whatever. Like, there are these things that are discussed in these editorial meetings, in the publishing meetings. Like, this is something that is stated explicitly, and everyone's just pretending it isn't. like it's just not happening. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
this is new. We never used to do this. Like, this never used to be part of the conversation, because I was in journals where this wasn't part of the conversation even 3-4 years ago, and now it's everything. It's the only conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, yeah, what have you seen in terms of this? Because I think that I always think of this too, as I think of, okay, the normie listener who stumbles upon this podcast, will be like, that's ridiculous. These guys are conspiracy theorists. They're bitter. They're, angry white male or whatever, right? Like, kind of like,
Sure.
I guess I'm assuming on your part, I don't know, but
No, it's true. Yeah.
yeah. And so there's this, I was just thinking, like, what have you seen with your work in terms of, like, seen as an editor in the industry at various lit mags and journals? Like, I think people don't quite understand how bad it is. So I've been trying on this podcast to collect just firsthand accounts of, like, what you've seen. And I think this gets to some of, like, what motivated this project and all of that. And like you said, you were even surprised at how easy it worked with that first one. And then it kind of snowballed into all of this. Like, what have you seen working in the industry like this?
Well, I've worked in the industry as an editor before. I've worked with publishers in, the big cities and whatever. Um, and what you suspect about it is true.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just put that out there. It's true. Yeah, it is going on. It's actively happening at all levels. Um, I've it's what can I reveal basically? I make the joke in the afterword of Echo that you can basically go on an aggregate site like Chill Subs, sort of throw a dart, go on to any magazine and read its sort of about section, and you'll find some sort of statement about anti-racism or da-da-da, all this sort of stuff. It's the vast majority. I give particular names like Anomaly magazine and all of this. And even the Bitch and Kitsch, which Chris is the editor for. Like, these are like labyrinthine in certain cases, where if you go to submit to her or them or whatever, it's it's like it's a fucking like 6-page questionnaire, like asking you who you are, what sort of experiences you've had. Like, they will not allow this kind of content. There's zero tolerance policy for anything. You can't explain yourself, da da da. I'm not going to write about rape and stuff like that, because that's not really my bag. Like, I don't have experience with that. It's not what I'm interested in or anything like that. But yeah, so much as like a mention of something and no content warning gets you blacklisted. Like, Queerlings, I think I got into, they needed content warnings for everything, and if you didn't include one, I might be misremembering for them, but I know they had definite content warning type things. I had to put them on the poem that I got in there. Like, yeah, if you misstep at any point, basically you're liable to basically just get the equivalent of shadow banned. Like, they're so gutless, they won't tell you. They'll just do this weird whisper network shit, or they'll just block your email address and stuff. They're so scared of confrontation on any of this, and they don't want to have to explain themselves. And it's just this very bizarre, insular kind of community now. So I would obviously put the content warnings on and stuff, because I was trying to act like I was part of the club and all this sort of shit. But yeah, tons of these magazines had these questionnaires for a while, like the New Quarterly in Canada and stuff. They've sort of gotten away from the questionnaire portion, but the sort of spirit is still there, and they state it openly. So you can't assume that if you're like a white male or something like that, like us, that you're going to get the same treatment. They outright state they're looking for something that isn't you.
Right.
And either they're lying, which why would they do that? Then they're just silly. Like, they're either just like quote unquote virtue signaling, as much as the term is stale now, or they don't believe in what they say they believe in. But either way, it's silly. So, and you're not going to get a fair shake. So on the surface level, anyone can go out and see this. You could just spend 5 or 10 minutes of your time. You'll run into this inevitably.
Same with contests, like any of the literary contests or anything that are sponsored by institutions or even a journal. There is a disclaimer, essentially. Yeah, when you're reading the kind of description or how to submit section, basically, like, yeah, a political disclaimer, which is what it is. You know, like, it's yeah. And even for agents, like when you're fishing for agents and stuff, it depends on how they have you submit. A lot of times they'll just have you, whatever, email them or something and they'll get back to you. But like, they have like forums like Submittable, but for like agents, I forget what the name of it is. And you submit your manuscript, you put in your email, and then there's all these questions that you would get. At least a few years ago when I was doing this, there were all this kind of identity questions about like, why do you have authority to tell this story? What are your demographics? And they weren't asking this for a government census thing like you would for employment. All right. They were asking for this particular reason. They were asking to know whether they could ignore it or throw it in the trash pile, based on those factors. And I bring this up too, because one of the things I got into on that other podcast that I brought up where I was a guest was I brought up that article that Joyce Carol Oates wrote.
Yeah.
What was it, 2021-ish or something like that? And she was just talking about what she sees, what she's been seeing and hearing from her friends and colleagues in the industry, editors, publishers, agents. And I was just like, everybody now, because she said this, everybody's pretending that she's some like crazy racist old woman. Like, no, she isn't. Okay. And that is the only argument I need. All right. Like, no, she isn't. She's Joyce Carol Oates. Like, yeah. And she's writing about what she sees, and she thought, and I mean, obviously it was very, not mealy mouthed, but she was being very generous about it. about just kind of how this was setting off like kind of an uncomfortable thing in her, where she was seeing this and being like, "What? Like we never used to do this. That was never a part of the industry." But it's so obvious now, and I think this is a good. Yeah, we should get into the kind of the. It's funny. I want to ask you about all this stuff too, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I want to get into. Basically, let's get into the identity politics of it, because like, okay, this is the thing, right? Like, we have to talk about it. It's, it's not in every poem in the book, but it's in the book. Like identity politics. That's the big thing. That's really causing all of this to be possible. Like the reason the hoax worked was its appeal to identity politics. So I just like, yeah, like Jasper, your thoughts on this big cultural phenomenon that some people are denying exists, other people are bumping up against, other people are rejecting. Like it's this thing. And I want to talk to you about Poetry Foundation and all of that too, with kind of this, what do you make of it? This identity politics, and this is where I come in with the DNC rubric. It's identity, but it's also tied to like these weird political things. Like you have to go over how well does this poem adhere to these proposed policies by this particular political organization, and not just like how good is the poem or how well does it adhere to kind of structural stuff and on all of that. And I don't know. I mean, just, yeah, I know that's a huge question. Jasper, your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much I could say on this, especially because I follow it in a broader sense too, beyond poetry and everything, of course, as a lot of us do now. Um, well, yeah, the Joyce Carol Oates stuff, I saw that on because I'll hop on like 4chan's lit board and everything because those guys are curmudgeons, like me, or at least they're somewhat traditional when it comes to the industry and their expectations of it and everything like that. So I'm down with the edge lords and everything there. And that's where I get a lot of my literary news because I just don't want to get it from other sources. Like I just find it so tainted and it's so clearly framed in a certain way. Like if you were to read a random article on Joyce Carol Oates, the reactions to it would just be nothing but what you would expect from
Right.
legacy media types. So I will say that, it sounds like you've had that kind of experience trying to navigate the industry, right?
Oh
Where,
yeah.
you had the questionnaires and all that sort of stuff, right? So, um, that, yeah, all that sort of stuff that she mentioned, it's going on. It's been my experience too. I think a lot of us have picked up on it. And then if you have to immediately, with someone like Joyce Carol Oates, resort to personal attacks, then she's on to something. You can't really fight her contentions, so you're just kind of going around the issue and you're trying to distract from it. And it's a tried and true tactic from these people. A couple I saw tried to go like, well, actually, no, in my experience, agents are not doing this. Who says this is true? Just that sort of lame ass type.
That's always the go-to. It's not, yeah, that no, you're making it up. You just suck. Whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just fucking terrible. It's just bad argumentation, but people fall for it. They get wrapped up in the pathos of it all. So I guess, if it's where this comes from, that's so huge, and I'd have to get into some pretty inconvenient topics, let's say, but I'm not sure how willing you are to go into some of this, but you could look at things like, let's look at some lower level ones like US aid and everything. Actively funding programs that are geared more towards identity politics. And, identity politics, I would say, they had some use before. It was ostensibly about the liberation of historically marginalized people and stuff like that. And I mean, unless you're willing to take a stance that they shouldn't be liberated in any way, and there should be some sort of like fucking like constant master-slave dynamic type thing in society, like unless you're willing to do that, I mean, which is a pretty hard thing. It's funny anyway. Like I'm not gonna act like it's not a funny contention because I see guys on Lit offering these all the time, but it's so hard to offer good arguments for that. And then you risk just being completely torched because people are like, wow, you really want people from like Madagascar to stay poor forever just because you want a slightly better life in, you know, your country or whatever it is. I mean, it's I'm not going to advocate for people living poorly or anything, or like these massive sort of apparatuses of quote unquote injustice in society. I just don't think. I think there's so much excess. There's so many resources to go around now that really we could all live pretty good lives. Now, do I want everyone living wherever they want in the world at all times, doing whatever the fuck they want? That might be a little bit much. Um, I'm trying to be very diplomatic because I could be, you know, my usual edgelord, like funny what I'd say with the guys kind of shit.
Right.
But you know, I'm on a podcast here. You know, I'm trying to represent.
So that'll get somebody listening to just dig in and dox you as soon as they can.
Yeah. Like that's when they really take issue. Like, man, this guy's a racist. Blah blah blah. Whatever the fuck they're gonna spew. But yeah, no, I want people to live well no matter where they are in the world, what they're doing. And I'll stand by that. It's more that these identity politics have become so pervasive and so domineering almost in all aspects of our lives that they've kind of run their course and turned into a mechanism of, let's say, I don't want to say oppression, that's a little bit too extreme, but
right.
like a mechanism of stultification, if you will, where you're just going to end up fixed in a kind of prison of your own making here if you really adhere to it all the way through and you take it to its logical conclusion. I mean, you're going to want to approach every sort of black person you see and offer them $5 out of your wallet or something because apparently they make less money than you and all this sort of shit. Like, it's just weird, it's bizarre, and it runs you ragged. You can't live that way. Like, I drive to work or something, and I see a homeless person on the street, I think to myself, yeah, it'd be great, you know, if our financial institutions weren't so inherently flawed and just so anti-humanistic that this person could, even if they were, you know, a drug user or something like that, still live well, still have a house or something, you know, roof over their heads, even if they were making bad choices or whatever. Like, I think those things, and I go, yeah, this would be a more humanistic way to live. If we treated even this type of person in society with the dignity that they ought to have. I'm not going to go get out of my car and go, oh, you know what, homeless man who's probably actively high right now and his pants are sagging down by his ankles and stuff. Do you want all the money in my wallet? Do you want it right now? Like, let me help you, sir. Like, I just need to know that you're going to be okay today.
Right.
Like, all this kind of stuff. Like, I really do feel bad for them, and I guess I'm trying to look at big picture things, and I'm trying to steer people toward more humanistic modes of living and writing and all of that sort of stuff. Because we all need to pull each other up, and it can't just be one person Robin Hooding or distributing money out of their wallet to homeless people, and that's going to be the fucking be all end all. So yeah, I don't even mind when I see like anti-capitalistic sort of rhetoric and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, but you're misdirecting it. Like, all of this stuff is performative. I can tell you exactly how fractional reserve banking is a scourge upon humanity, but you're not willing to go that far. You're not willing to look at who's orchestrating this. You will see one type of group involved. You'll see white men involved. it's not just them. Like
Yeah.
it's really not, and I can show you that it isn't. Um, so I kind of run up against issues with identity politics because people aren't really actually willing to, let's say, explore them as they should, and in a way that would lead to actual general increases in welfare instead of just redistribution the other way. Take money from whites, give it to the guy in Madagascar or something like that. That shit just sucks, and it creates an imbalance on the other side, or it just drags everyone down. That's is horrible. So poetry, kind of, to bring it back to this, has kind of undergone the same thing. There are still excellent talents at work out here doing all sorts of stuff, writing about junk topics, or they're doing some anti-capitalistic poem about how, movie tickets should be $8 instead of 13, and this is a fundamental crime against their ability to entertain themselves. I'm like, man, fucking, I don't know, kill a banker or something, allegedly. Like, go to the heart of this. Kill a politician who advocated for, this or that increase in interest rates, or, these, a lot of our problems are financial in Canada. Not to go on too many different tangents, but you couldn't motivate people to do fuck all. They were just like mired in this ideological nonsense, but they were just kind of letting everything slowly get worse around here. And as soon as money got involved with these tariffs and blah blah blah, suddenly there's this like nationalistic movement. Everyone's Canadian and da da da, and we got to fight back against the Americans. I'm like, man, fuck this. Like, you guys
Yeah.
are so predictable. Like, all you do is threaten your wallets, and now suddenly things change. It's really sad, and I think money is unfortunately the biggest driver of a lot of this. Where the funding goes, people follow. And poetry is kind of similar. They'll apply for the grants, and they'll jump through all the hoops to get this money. They'll write dumb shit that doesn't need to exist. They'll do whatever. They'll start magazines and apply for government of this or that funding, and then they'll just kind of kowtow. So, I mean, I can't agree with them, because I sometimes want what they want, but I
Yeah.
want it in a different, more meaningful and lasting capacity. And they really can't see that. They just cannot wrap their heads around these facts. And so I end up just going, well, I mean, good luck then.
Yeah. It is, because this is a good time to talk about kind of what people are calling the institutional capture, and I think it may be easier to talk about a few examples where it's like it's the thing that I always say, like, identity politics is the thing that it's in the atmosphere. How do you talk about this thing that's just kind of like, it's like a cloud, it's like just kind of hovering over everything in the atmosphere, and you have to it's just a milieu that you're just waiting around it. It's not like, a thing we could point to, although we could point to examples of things like, yeah, like we already talked about with kind of the questionnaires on like submitting to journals or something, or an agent.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Poetry Foundation. You mentioned Poetry Magazine and all that, but I wanted to ask you, yeah, about kind of the institutions that are captured. What do you think of Don Scher resigning from the Poetry Foundation, or just the Poetry Foundation in general? Academy of American Poets. Are they captured institutions? What do you think about those?
Yeah, I actually didn't know about the stepping down of Don Scher there.
It
I don't.
happened during the peak of the George Floyd summer, like
Oh, gotcha,
it,
gotcha.
it was kind of like he got basically everybody turned on him. He didn't do anything,
Yeah,
like it
yeah,
was.
right.
And I don't think he was the best editor for that magazine, but like, it was one of those buried examples of kind of eating their own. This guy was a good, well-intentioned person. He was trying to do, follow the trend and give people opportunity and stuff like that, with the identity politics as like, the metric, kind of what color is this person, we should publish them,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it all kind of backfired, blew up in his face, and they made him kind of resign. something happened, I think, at the New Yorker as well, right? Didn't who was it Paul Muldoon, or who was the main poetry editor there? And of course, they pushed him out because he was a white male or something. Didn't understand, quote unquote.
Yeah.
The woke the takeover of this. But yeah, I just these institutions, because I do think I get the emails from these institutions, and all that, and it is kind of, it's always the same email, right? Like it's always this, like,
Yeah.
AWP just happened, and I was seeing articles about, like, they literally think they're being persecuted because the Trump administration, like, is removing funding or docking funding for people that mention the specific phrases of DEI and stuff like that, like the buzzwords.
Yeah.
And instead of changing the language, like there are all these articles written about how they're being persecuted for this. And Roxane Gay, again, this woman who gets paid to lie for a living,
Yeah.
there's just, like, just the things that people like that say, I think, is really what people aren't grappling with. Like somebody like Roxane Gay is publishing in the most prestigious publications in the world. And I'm talking,
Right.
the New York
Right.
Times, the Washington Post, the New Yorker, like she's publishing in these things. And the things she's saying are so vile, like so like horrible,
Yeah.
like so mean and ugly, and just kind of
Mhm.
like, she's just a mean liar. Like, and I'm just like thinking to myself, like, that's the problem, is that you're holding up this person who is so obvious, like, who in any other time would be shrugged off and be like, no, that's ridiculous. Why are we publishing that? But now is being celebrated and stuff. And I think that's how, when the Poetry Foundations thing happened and everybody was turning on Don Scher. And again, I don't want to defend Don Scher because I think he bought into all this. He's part of the Gen Xers that literally allowed this to happen, allowed the institutions to be completely captured. But even so, I have sympathy for him because I think, he didn't know what was coming. And this kind of, they were accusing him of, like, all these people that he selected for, like, the big prizes that they give out, for these young poets and stuff. They were, like, pretending that he didn't do that for them. Like, all the people that he pulled up and basically handed careers were telling him, that he needs to resign or they're not going to publish anymore. And I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, well, man, maybe you should give back, like, the $50K that they gave you to write poems then, or something, like, if you really don't like this institution. But of course, it wasn't about them not liking the institution. It was about this trend, this kind of political thing. So I don't know, just your thoughts on this. And I know Academy of American Poets has done something like all these other journals did to you, where they started scrubbing writers' stuff.
Yeah.
Based on, not even, like, just based on rumors, not real stuff, not facts, not anything that actually happened, just rumors about something they did or said, 15, 20, 10 years ago. And then they would just start scrubbing stuff off the internet. Like, that's the part where I'm just like, okay, like, you're using this thing to motivate you to do some horrific stuff here now, like, where you're scrubbing stuff off the internet. Like, you're not the good guy in this, like,
Yeah.
you're scrubbing an artist's work that you accepted and paid them for some of these institutions. Like, they're paying you for the poetry, and now you're not standing by it. It's just, you're throwing people under the bus, and it's just so, I don't know. I just think it does feel, it's suffocating. That's how I describe it. It's a suffocating feeling, like you said, where it's crowding out so many possibilities. It's crowding out so much that could be happening. We could be pushing the genres forward. We could be experimenting more. We could be bringing in, like, an age of new enlightenment, or I don't know. Let's not go that far, but just, just kind of a bigger appreciation. I mean, maybe I'm just being wistful that's never going to happen, like a big thriving literary community or something. But I feel like it is stifling that from happening, because you're so preoccupied with this thing that isn't about the art. It's about something else. And that, however well-intentioned, that is, and well-motivated that is, it's just insane to me that we've let it get this far. And I don't know. I think of things like this, and the reason I brought up Bloom in the beginning is because whenever I read Bloom, I'm like, man, this guy is so right. And he's never been assigned to me in any of my coursework. I've never been assigned a Harold Bloom essay. Professors would talk about him all the time, particularly his Anxiety of Influence, his literally biggest contribution that he made to literature. They'll talk about it. They'll mention it all the time, particularly if you're studying poetry. but they never assign the essay. They'll never assign the book. They'll never like
Right.
assign. What do you think of this guy who's literally was one of the leading scholars on this in the world? Uh, and I mean, the reason for that is because he was pro canon, all of that stuff. But yeah, your thoughts on that, the kind of institutional capture, and I get that's almost like a buzzword now. Like I almost feel stupid
Hmm.
saying it, like uh,
Yeah, I mean that's and no, it's totally cool. I mean, I definitely don't hear people say institutional captures nearly as much as I would hear them say like woke or whatever, any of that
right.
sort of stuff. So I don't mind it at all. It's a perfect sort of term in this case. And I would say that basically wherever there's money involved, you're going to see that. And the more money, the higher the likelihood of complete capture. So these, I mean, I don't think people realize institutions like the Paris Review were quite literally CIA operations. Like they were funded directly by three-letter agencies and things of that sort. Now, again, that gets into uncomfortable territory because then people start to think that I'm, some loony or whatever. But this is all well documented. Like in the 60s, they were pouring a lot of money into cultural efforts, let's say. And poetry and publishing were no different because they were a lot more popular back then than they are now. So, you've got money flowing in, and this isn't just like, hey, create a magazine that's great. This is, hey, create a magazine that's great, but also we'd like you to do one or two other things with this too. We got some ideas for what we want here. And it shows. It's very subtle at first, but then when it grows into is this sort of bizarre beast, some sort of strange ideological beast. So, the poetry organization there and, all these different writers groups, AWP, A blah, 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 A this or that, they're all gonna succumb to it eventually because they want this continued steady funding to expand their influence, to pay off their sort of, sometimes executives or higher ups and things of that sort. But they associate influence with money a lot of the time. If they're getting money, that means they're doing a good job. People are liking them, so to speak. Doesn't matter that a lot of these poetry journals and stuff like that fail and all that. Those are the ones that just aren't really propped up well enough by institutional money. They kind of go
Right.
under the radar and they die. Like poetry journals are not profitable.
Right.
Let's just be flat out honest about that. And the ones that are like ideologically compromised who still fail, they just didn't get the funding fast enough. But a lot of these institutions are worried about things like USAID because, yeah, once that dries up, then they have to actually confront the fact that they aren't really that influential, no matter how hard they try, no matter how many fake interviews they run with people that are just so hopelessly curated, they couldn't possibly express anything authentic or worthwhile for the public. These Roxane Gay types, they're just
A huge influence in the literary world. Yeah, like she's literally crowned, in the literary kind of culture too. Yeah, she's a prominent. Literally, people point to it and say, "Look what she said." Like
yeah, and that's a carefully curated figure that succeeded. Like, they put enough money into raising her to that status that people now just kind of accept it. And it doesn't matter if she spouts vile stuff or isn't very talented or this or that. It's kind of like a news anchor. They're
right,
just there. No matter what, you're just going to see them, and then they have that kind of default influence over you. So I don't know too much about her work personally because I just really don't have time to keep up with people like that as much. But I go back to the maxim when it comes to things like propaganda in general, if we're talking about her and her influence, where people often feel that they are being propagandized too, and they don't really know how to put their thumb on what's going on. They don't know how to express to other people that this is going on. And so that's where you get like the angry boomer rants on online and stuff. They're so angry and they just want
Right.
people to understand them because they feel alone, they feel isolated. And if you understand that the primary directive of propaganda and these sort of institutions is to make you feel isolated, the whole goal of propaganda is not to give you something that is like half wrong and you can point out the sort of follies of and kind of make an argument against. It's to give you something so blatantly wrong that you feel almost enraged or demoralized in the face of it. That anyone is accepting any of this at all and just running with it out of bad faith is so distressing to you that you actually end up kind of just melting down or
Right.
doing any of this. So figures like Roxane Gay, I don't know too much about her, but they are just agents of this. They just cause people like us, if we're not as sort of with it, to just start melting down. And then
Yeah.
we check out of these institutions and they get to kind of run amok. So I don't want that. I obviously want to clue people into the fact that this is what they're doing. Like they're saying they hate you, and maybe some of them don't actually, but they have to say that. But they're just following the money. They're following the money from these bigger governments and Soros type institutions, let's say, without getting too far into it. Um, you know, and
It's
those are the true bad actors.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever got kind of dogpiled online was in 2020. Uh, and I was naive at the time, didn't understand what I was walking into essentially. But it was during the blow up of the Poetry Foundation, and I was still on Facebook at the time, and I just said something about how like this is ridiculous, like what are you talking about? This isn't a racist institution. This isn't like, and the big thing was they wanted to force in the demand letter that all these people signed. Uh, they wanted to force the foundation to spend down the endowment that they have. I think it's something like upwards of $400 million.
Holy
And
shit.
I was
Yeah.
just thinking about, but like, the thing I said that got me in trouble was I just said, look, like, why do you want the only institution in the world that literally provides free poetry to everyone in the world? And that has a fantastic archive that is free. You can access it whenever you want. Why do you want them to have less money? Like the same thing with like the laws with that. I'm like, you just don't understand what you're talking about. Like, you don't want them to spend down their endowment because then they could have less money that they take out every year because there's a law that if you're a nonprofit organization, you can take out 5%, without having all the tax burdens and stuff every year. And I'm
Mhm.
like, and with that 5%, they fund all of those fellowships. They fund, and then those fellowships aren't like nothing either. They're like $50,000, which is more money than you're ever going to make writing poetry. Like
Yeah, yeah.
these are serious things. Like this is not like, and I'm like, why do you want them to like not be able to do that now? You don't even know what you're saying. Like you're talking about destroying like one of the only poetry institutions that like helps poetry spread to the world for free to everyone, and you want them to be able
Yeah.
to do less of that in order to not be racist. Like you're not even making sense. Like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And then I
No,
got, it was some editor
that's true.
from Tupelo Press or whatever that literally
Oh
like started
God,
like
yeah.
retweeted me or whatever, and then I just started getting all this friends, people that I went to school with that were literally like calling me a racist or whatever, and that was my first realization when I realized, oh wow, the people, even my mentors, like the people who know me very
Oh,
well, would turn on me in
damn.
an instant. Would publicly denounce me in an instant if it came to it, and that didn't happen, but that was my first kind of realization of, oh wow, like this, something's happening here that like wasn't happening a year or two ago. uh
Yeah,
yeah,
no
insane.
doubt.
And
That's
I know
crazy.
we didn't talk too much about the book and stuff too, but there were a few poems that I did want to point out too, especially like I was going to ask about your like poetry pet peeves and things, and like
Sure.
how much of those made it into the book. I was thinking
Yeah.
specifically of the poem that's in like Chinese with a few
Yeah,
English
Baba.
things. I was thinking of the erasure poem, which I hate erasure poems so much. Like I'm
Yeah.
so glad that it's in there. Uh,
Yeah.
there's erasure is just one of those things right now where I'm just like, ugh, this is the easiest, lowest form, like kind of poetry you could ever create. And they're
Yeah.
getting published everywhere. People are like, oh, look at how powerful this erasure is. They blocked out all these words, but the word "the" in this whole paragraph, so that they could move to the next one. I'm just like, yeah, like that's not creating. Like that's, but
Yeah, it's
that's
like
my whole take on it.
curating
Yeah.
at best.
But the Chinese poem and the erasure poem and a few others too, like those were some of my favorites. Where I thought like they were because well, one, you did them so well that it's not obvious that they're hoax poems from first glance, although sometimes they are, right? Like,
Right.
and then they get accepted, and I'm just thinking poems like that. Like, what motivated you to put a poem in mostly Chinese? You know, like, what? Why did you know that would work? You know, I mean, I have an idea, but yeah, why did you know that would work as part of this?
Sure. Yeah. And the one thing I'll say about the poetry institution there before we move on is
Yeah,
yeah,
please, yeah,
it's not that I don't want them to have any funding either. Like,
right,
it's not that I think like if anyone gets any money, it's just suddenly
yeah,
this weird establishment beast or something. That's not quite the case. It's just really the source of the money and how it's being used, and really is it being given in earnest without strings attached, that kind of thing. And I can't say that that's true for most poetry institutions. I would love poetry to be spread for free, as you can find on
right.
poetry.com and stuff like that, or .org, whatever it is. Um, that's excellent. That's what we need, and I think that's a benefit to all of humanity. So, people who think that I'm firmly anti any type of poetry group or that kind of shit, it's just not true. But either way, yeah.
Yeah,
So
somebody's got to make the sausage. Yeah, like there has to be a little sausage factory somewhere. Yeah.
yeah, of course, and it's to our benefit as a group. But yeah. So with Baba, like I had noticed that they really just love having foreign words untranslated now.
If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard. Yeah, yeah.
In these magazines, and I'd read this poem. I'm like, okay, well, I don't read or speak Chinese, so sometimes they would in parentheses include a translation. It's like, oh, okay, this is just like post-colonial lit. Like, oh, I'm proving to you that this concept is better in my home, or like my native language or whatever. And I go, okay, yeah, and kind of roll my eyes at it if they did it too much. Like, I'd see ones where there'd be like 8 of these terms in one stanza. I'd be like, all right, just write it in fucking Chinese then.
Yeah.
Like, if it's better expressed in another language, write it in that language. I don't mind at all. Then get someone to translate it over or do it yourself after, whatever. But they would just, like, it was a little bit annoying at first, but I understood why they did it, and I didn't really mind. But
Sometimes it can really work too. Like, yeah, just
yeah,
having like a
yeah.
different language word, end rhymes, you can start messing with that, like with that too. Like yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah. But I just had to
No,
clarify. Yeah, it can work. Like, it can be really good. Yeah. Like,
yeah, there are some poems that I really actually admire where the interplay between the languages is really impressive. And I did a little bit of that myself later in one of the fake book reviews where I had to mix Spanish, Arabic, and English. And like I'm on like Google Translate, fucking doing this sort of stuff. Like it's Japanese, Spanish, Arabic, and English. The my Ohio yawns its assonance like quote from um, one of the poems in this fake collection about the guy who pretends to be an anime girl, and it's this like journey of self-discovery and moving to the US from Mexico. Like
Autogotophilia, yeah.
Yeah, it's fucked, but like yeah, I would sort of like mimic that elsewhere in the collection too. But Baba was more about this insistence on incorporating characters from other languages, but to excess. Like where now it's not even really an English poem, it's just yeah, like a poem in another language masquerading as one in
Right.
English. So I wrote it's sort of like an erasure one where there are only a couple English terms per stanza. The rest of it is just Chinese characters. And it tells the story of this granddaughter relating her Baba's and it should be yeah, by the way. I intentionally used the wrong term. Baba is just old man or father, but yeah is grandfather. So like just to fuck with them even more, I used the wrong term. But it's telling of Baba's experience moving to San Francisco from China and having no money in his pocket and having like 11 children and then being mistreated by evil white people. And she just goes like in the end, I love you, Baba. But she says, I leave in English, blah, blah, blah. I legitimately leave. Yeah, it's my hero as your granddaughter, fighting prejudice, injustice, understanding change, following your example, blah, blah, blah. I love you, Baba. And I couldn't believe it. So on the surface, it's that kind of poem here, and the Eleanor Navia May Payne was the big cock girl dissident was the persona I used for this one. The big cock girl dissident was in Chinese characters, but they never checked that either. But um, the text in the background is actually like a paragraph that I've repeated a couple of times. And I include in the publication notes the translation of it. I just went on DeepL and sort of got it to translate it because I'm not good enough at Chinese, and what translator was going to take this job and to translate this for me. But yeah, so it's akin to something like, let me see if I can find it in the publication notes here. But it's akin to, yeah, let's see. Baba. It's you can't read this, can you? Well, that's not surprising. You'll never understand me despite your interest in other cultures, your inclusiveness. You never included Baba when he first moved here, did you, white ghost? He gave you so much and you punished him for it. You probably think this poem is exotic and hip. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And I've mixed in as well, just periodically, I just threw it in randomly. Buy my chapbook, bitch, and die, die, die. So like it's actually advocating for like death.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and like,
and this was accepted. This was
Yep.
put on the homepage of the website, the WordPress or whatever that the journal uses.
Yep.
That's fantastic. I'm thinking, I've noticed this trend where because of the identity politics, because publishing, was so gung-ho about, publishing kind of the historical minority categories. They were just obsessed with these government census categories and like trying to make metrics go up. But they're like, there wasn't enough, even people like submitting for it, like to these prizes, these publications. So now there's like this obsession with translations. like kind of importing minority like minority written novels or poetry collections from another language, translating into English, and then claiming that we're hitting those metrics or those identity politics goals that they set for themselves. And I just remember thinking, like, I read this one. It was the one that was highly awarded, and Grey Wolf translated it in English. What was it? I have it on my shelf. The Discomfort of Evening.
I think I've heard of that. I haven't read it though.
It was huge a couple years ago. Friend gave it to me. It wasn't something I would set out, but whatever. Friend, you give each other books and stuff. It was big, and it makes sense that they would hand it to me. I think I made it 150 pages before I was like, I can't finish this. This is so bad. And I was just thinking, I was like, how is Grey Wolf usually has such a great editor? Like, they usually pick great books to like put their money behind, small press by compared to the other ones, like kind of more literary focused. I'm like, why did you do this? And then you look at it, it's like, it wasn't even like a minority. It was like some white fake tranny from like Belgium or Norway or I don't know. I'm just like, and I'm like, what? This book is so bad. like,
I saw that posted on Lit too. That's where I remember it from. And they'd just be spamming tranny like over and over again.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm a girl, but I'm also like gonna say I'm not because it's trendy right now, but also like I still am, and also like, I don't know. And it's interesting to me because I'm actually reading this for another podcast. So I'm reading The Magic Mountain, which will be, listeners, stay tuned for that when that comes out and stuff. And I'm thinking of this and I'm like, yeah, this is such a great novel. And like, of course it was translated from German into English for everybody to read. I have mixed feelings about this, but same with Bolaño's 2666. I've been reading that and I was just like, yeah, this is translated. Of course it was translated. He's a great writer. Like, but then I look around, I'm like, yeah, we're kind of compensating for the lack of actually having the numbers that they're trying to get to with these kind of identity politics based publishing. And I'm just like, man, so you guys are definitely trying to supplement with this. I don't know, pick any random Nigerian that you translated into English for this mediocre book. I don't know. But yeah, I just love that was what you hit on with this poem, the Chinese poem, in terms of like you're hitting the nail on the head. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a direct hit. Like people would fawn over this because they can't even understand it and they're fawning over it. Like they don't even know what it says and they're fawning over it. Insane. It's insane.
It truly is. Yeah. And to your point, actually, about translated works, I've really noticed that. Yeah, they're trying to fill the void by just obscurely picking like a random novel or poetry collection from someone writing in like Catalan or I note one of the sort of fake personas who got published in the fake Echo review portion is trying to resuscitate like this ancient Aztec form of poetry. Like they're so desperate for like this revivalism or like spreading things everywhere through the vehicle of English language that they're going to go to just ridiculous lengths. So I see it everywhere. Some of it's good, like some of it's interesting in the sense that you would get a type of experience you simply wouldn't get through English language literature. And so I don't mind some of it, truthfully. Like some of it is fine, at least the principle of it. But yeah, they're picking such dog shit collections sometimes. I have to just shake my head at it. I saw that there was a novel someone gave me, kind of like what you had. That experience there. It was At Night All Blood is Black. I'm pretty sure that was the title of the novel. And it was the last name of the author was Diop, I believe, and he was Nigerian, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a World War I novel in translation, and it's kind of like bizarre historical revisionism / like magic realism, where it's documented that people from the colonies and stuff would have fought for European forces and stuff like that, either the Axis forces or the Allied forces. So it's not that they don't have any types of experiences in those wars, and like you could share those would be meaningful to certain readers.
It could be a great novel too. Yeah, like very rich topic. Yeah.
Like I have nothing against someone writing a novel, I guess, from the perspective of like an African soldier who somehow made it into fucking World War One. Like, cool. I'm not gonna say you can't do that, because then I'm committing the exact same type of mistake that I'm actively railing against. So it's more just how much is this promoted? What kind of awards is it given? If it's objectively a bad book. And I read this thing, I made it about 15 pages in. And I guess it's like an African storytelling strategy where you just repeat the same thing over and over again, but it drove me insane. He just repeats, he's like, I'm son of blah, 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 da, da, da. And I found my friend in the ditch, and I went to help him. And I am the son of blah, blah, blah. And pray to God, I did that. And he would just say the same thing over and over again, how he found his friend in the ditch. The first 15 fucking pages is the same thing you could have gotten on the first page. And I'm like, okay, this is like some sort of like oral story tradition, but now put into book form, and like, cool, but I'm really tired of it. This is just not for me. And this won like a major award through Picador Press or whatever. It won a major award. And I'm like, man, I have worked with high school students who could write a competent book like this at this level. Like, if we're just going to repeat the same thing over and over again. And, you know, it reminded me of some of the oral storytelling in like indigenous literature. So there's a meaningful cultural tie, but my God, they were just like praising this book like you wouldn't believe it. And it's just bad in my opinion. Right. And I'm not going to pretend it isn't. I feel like insane that I can't recognize that there's something good in it, but it fucking sucked. I had to put it down.
Yeah, that's where I come in with that whole, okay, like, yeah, like, you know, like, this is just like when people are overpraising it and stuff like that, I'm always just like, all right, get a grip, man. Like, you need to get a fucking grip here. It's a novel. It can be great. It can be life-changing, but this ain't it, bro. Like, we all know what that feels like when you read the novel that's like life-changing, great, epic story. You know, we usually know right away when we're reading that. This ain't it, man. Get a grip. I think that's interesting too, with the kind of the overpraising stuff. Are you familiar with Tony Hoagland at all? Poet, American poet.
Tony Hoagland. I can't say I've engaged with his work, but the name sounds vaguely familiar.
He's definitely of the kind of Gen X style, where it wasn't so much about form and structure as it was about kind of the topic. But he died of cancer a few years ago, and R.I.P. I love Tony Hoagland. But he wasn't buying a lot of this identity stuff. In his last collection, he was really kind of railing on, because he taught college for many years, you know, as one would do if you were trying to be a poet. But he would write about this stuff, and there's one poem that he mentions about how his students keep taking the stories of their grandparents and like passing it off as their own, you know, like kind of no, like, that's not what you went through. That's what your grandparents went through 100 years ago when they came here. Okay. Like, that's not what you went through at all. Not even what your parents went through. That's what your grandparents went through. Okay. Like, and it was horrific, and sure, everybody agrees. Like, yeah, it was horrible. It was racist, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you didn't. You went to school here at the University of Houston and didn't have any issue getting in, never had anybody spit on you or say something, like all of that. But yeah, just interesting. And he got into a lot of trouble because of stuff like that. And he was an older white man, you know, so he was getting into trouble. And I remember he got into it with Claudia Rankin at a certain point too, who's another one of these mediocre writers who got kind of pushed up onto a pedestal with the identity politics, and she really leaned into it, like, I mean, hard, which is interesting too, because she's married to a white man and has, you know, mixed race children with him and all that. And it's just kind of like pretending that she's in danger or something because she's married to this white guy and has a child.
I know, right? I actually, not to interrupt, but I'll get onto the topic of my Kim Ko character, because she's exactly this person. But sorry, continue.
No, please, yeah, go on. Yeah, I was just gonna go off on Claudia, so please, it's better to do it, focus on your book than to go on all these tangents. But so this was based on like a Claudia Rankine style character, right? Like kind of like a for listeners, I guess we didn't even clarify, but yeah, there's all these personas in the book that Jasper created, all these different kind of writers and poets with with the intentional kind of background that I think I heard you describe this as kind of a trending, like whatever would the more trending groups or affiliations or ethnic backgrounds, right? So it was all purposely done to, again, not trick people, although you were tricking people, but to make it seem real, right? Because that's what everybody was looking for, you know. So yeah, I want to hear this. Yeah, please go into that.
It was exactly that. And I created more personas for the actual Echolalia review book, where I had 6 or so like personas that I would send poems out under, just based on their sort of identities and what realistically they could be writing about. And then for fun, I would fudge it and have like Adele write, the Holocaust poem, even though she's a Nigerian healthcare worker, she's writing up the Holocaust poem. So, I would fuck with it a bit near the end just to see what I could get away with. But beyond that, the other characters like Dirt Hog Sauvage, respectfully, I only sent some like parody stuff out under him. But he becomes more of a character in this as one of the editors of the magazine, who's pretending to be a Zoomer, even though, he's like basically a late millennial or early millennial, like Gen X almost.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kim Ko, formerly Bobinson, is exactly the type of person you just described, where she works at Yale and she's like a psychologist, like hard academic type, but also writes poetry. So she writes the Morning Coffee Un Academicus poem in this, where it's just nothing but, like, to read you a few lines. The noun is an accusative apoptotic gerund to say that laryngeal clodic gliticization fumigates redolently of Guatemalan Katara and sprouting twilight. Like, she's just the fucking worst to read, because she's just trying to show you that she's smart. But she also was married to another character in this, the Robin Bobbert Bobinson, who is like a famous white male poet. And she hates him. They've divorced now. And her whole interview and her fake like study on the idea of the white male poet is about how much she hates them and like wants them to die. But you realize it's just her, like, she's kind of mad that she got divorced. But I see so many of these like minority poets and all this sort of stuff, like dating white guys, and then you're gonna say like, I really hate white guys. Like, what the fuck is this? Like,
It's what are they? What's the online term for it? The sexlectics or whatever, like dialectics, but about who you want to have sex with. Like that's like it's kind of like the more you talk about it publicly, the more it directly correlates to your sexual fantasies. Like kind of like when it
Straight
comes
up.
to the race stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I see it with a lot of these writers and like artists and stuff. And it's not to say like, oh yeah, they all want me kind of thing. It's more just
Right.
like, I see their personal choices, but then they continue their shtick of like, I hate white guys. It's like, oh yeah, this is my husband, by the way, like John Stevenson.
Yeah, we
It's
have
like,
we have 2 children. We love each other with our 2 children, but I hate this. Yeah, but he's oppressing me every day, waking up next to me in the bed.
yeah, like, I really hate the way he makes me dinner at night. It's like so mean of him to
I
do
hate
that.
the
Like,
way he watches the children, so I can write this stuff down. Yeah, absolutely.
so it just ends up being absurd, and you have to like, yeah, you're just going to be called out for hypocrisy. Like, you like, soften up, treat your partner better. Then if you're going to be with him and all that, maybe you don't actually hate white men as much, or divorce him. I don't know, like Kim Ko had to, because it's not going to work if there's this constant tension between your animosity between toward people and who you choose to spend your life with. It seems kind of sad, actually, and I've actually witnessed that firsthand with other artists and all that, where there's a clear discrepancy between what they're actively thinking about identity politics and how they're living their lives. And I don't want any part of that, and I try to live as earnestly as I can in that regard. But yeah, it's to me it sucks. It's really unfortunate because you see marriages break up eventually if one partner goes too far into this.
And that goes
Uh,
for any kind of online, like people that get too into the manosphere or something and break, like divorce. Women do this, men do this. They're like, oh
yeah,
well, I read this thing online and now I'm like looking at my spouse suspect or something because they didn't do this internet forum thing that like proves that they love me.
yeah,
But yeah, very insane time to
it's
relationship
horrible.
wise with that. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's really my biggest problem with it. Like you're saying, is that it's not real. Like I don't believe it. Like that's really my biggest issue with a lot of this stuff. Like the Tony Hoagland line, taking your grandparents, lives and like pretending that they're your own. Like I just don't believe it. I don't believe that you were refused entry or something or like publication because of this. Like no one said that to you. People said it to your grandparents. Yeah. Or even somebody like Joyce Carol Oates, this woman she came out in a time where people were still telling her, you can't do this because you're a woman. Like to her face, no backlash, no issue. People just said that. I'm like, she lived through that. She knows what it's like for people to say that to you, and she knows
Yeah.
it's not happening. Like, it's not happening now. Like that's,
Yeah.
yeah. I just don't believe it. And then when you like you said, it kind of not only is it a bad way to live, but it affects the art. It makes your art less good. And I don't mean to pick on Claudia Rankin or anything like that, or maybe I do, but it just I see that with her too, that there is a distinct line that was drawn. You see her work before this kind of identity explosion in the late 2000 late 2010s. It was better when she wasn't obsessed with this trend, and now she's been obsessed with this trend for 10 years, and it's kind of, you can see the work suffer, and it's like, yeah, because it's not as real. Like you're playing a part that you think
Mm.
you should play. Bloom always said this about Toni Morrison,
Oh yeah.
where he said her best book is the Song of Solomon, which I agree with. Like if you read her entire like life's work of novels, she's a great writer. They're all good books, but like the Song of Solomon is her best work. Like, it is so good. Like it is a masterpiece.
Mhm.
Like and like Bloom would agree with that. And then he said what he noticed after that book got big and she got the kind of reputation. He said that she kind of became this thing that she was expected to be, like oh, you're this black woman writer, so you have to be doing this or you're not what you're supposed to be, or you're leaving something behind, or you're not fulfilling your duty or something like that. And you can see this with a lot of artists too. And I think that obviously she being one of the bigger examples, where he said that you kind of become a parody of what you once were because you're so preoccupied by something other than just writing a great novel or writing a great poem or something like that. You're like, oh, I have to become this figure that's like a voice for the unheard or something, and it does
Yeah.
affect the work. And even so, I mean, barely her books are still good. I would never say like Beloved isn't a good book, but like it's not as good as Song of Solomon. Yeah, Bloom's right about that. Like and it may be because it is maybe bogged down by the I mean, the slave narrative or whatever you want to say. Like, not that she was, didn't care about that. I would never say that, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, you get what I'm saying. Yeah. Listeners out there probably get it by now. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because like in your own work, let's say, what niche do you feel you occupy as a sort of creative? I don't know the extent to which you write at this point in time, but what would you say your niche is?
Interesting. I don't know. That's a pretty tough question to answer. Um, I've always had this feeling like I've never quite fit in to any of these things. And maybe that's just my own narcissism, but I think maybe it's more so that like even I noticed this when I was younger and getting into this stuff, I was so desperate to be accepted in the kind of artistic circles and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And I remember whenever I would get accepted into whatever like little clique or a group of friends or something that I wanted to be a part of in the art world, there was always a moment when I realized, oh wow, like I don't quite fit in here. Like like I'm not quite that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know how I would describe myself in terms of what I'm trying to do. I would say that like I'm very open to experiments and genres and all of that. I'm open to things. What I really like, I always say my metric is it good? Is it hitting me in that spot? You know, it doesn't necessarily, like I said, even like pop novels, I think can be considered good novels if they hit me in a certain spot that you feel it. It's one of those things you feel more than
Yeah.
I'm trying to write to. I mean, when I was younger, of course, I was trying to be, Bukowski, or I was trying to be, Kurt Vonnegut or something, and I think that's normal. But yeah, now I don't know what I would say I am now in terms of what I'm trying to do. Although I will say, that I have been discouraged in terms of I've stopped trying to submit to a lot of these journals, which is crazy because even a couple years ago, I was the guy that was, I came out of an MFA. I was submitting, hundreds of submissions a year, to get, one or two publications.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just felt like, well, maybe it's just easier for me to just put this out on a Substack or something. And I've been trying to go in that direction since. I did have a kid in like 7 months ago, so that kind of put a damper on it. But I'm just now getting like back into like, okay, when she goes to bed at
Congrats on the
night.
kid, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And when she goes to bed at night, daddy has time to do some editing or some writing or some reworking, and start doing that regularly. But because I have enough material, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what kind of, I guess I've given up trying to be like, oh, this is how I'd market it. I just kind of like, this is just me, whatever. I mean, maybe somebody that read it could easily put me into a category, but it's always hard to do it yourself or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the reason I asked too is because like there are different career paths in writing these days, where, there are some people who want to write for themselves. There are some people who are really publication oriented. And then there's middle ground and everything. And I've worked with all types of writers in that regard. But you've been in the journals, you've been through the drill and all this sort of stuff. You're good enough to get into all these mags and everything. And then it leaves you kind of, in this sort of great expanse now where you're like, well, if I can't make it to the top because I'm not embodying these ideologies or I'm not representing a certain demographic that they like, what do I do with this? And a lot of people just stop. They just stop writing because they get kind of demoralized and they feel like there's really nothing out there for them. We've got Substack now and everything. You can find people who appreciate your stuff, but some people really want that validation from quote unquote seasoned veteran editors and all that stuff too.
And so I understand that. Yeah, I understand wanting it, especially coming out of the kind of MFA institutional side of it. Oh, I definitely feel that. Yeah, like, people don't want to admit it. But, oh yeah, I want the recognition. Yeah, like I want it. Yeah,
for sure. It feels way better than any payment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, what am I toiling away for? Yeah.
That's exactly it. You want one of your peers or like someone even above you in rank to go like, yeah, you've got the stuff.
Right.
It's really quite encouraging. And so I went through that too, where I really wanted that validation. And in some ways, this is kind of me going like, well, I can get the validation, right? I feel much more secure as a writer after doing a project like this. Like I can literally get into just about any type of mid to lower level magazine at will. The higher level ones I didn't really bother sending to for this because it just takes too long.
It's
like 6 months.
And I think people don't understand either. Like when you're talking like the top tiers, you're talking New Yorker, Paris Review, Harper's, like these big Granta, like these big international. If you're in those, you can have a whole career if you get published in one, like kind of big flag in your cap. You can't get into those without agent placement now. Like I know they pretend that you can, and they have free open submissions, but like they're just not. No, there's so many pages. People are competing to get in. Agents are bidding to get their clients in there. And again, poets usually don't have agents, but some of the big ones might have somebody fighting for them. And those don't even happen. So I totally get that. Yeah, like it would just be, you wouldn't get anything published, no matter how. Even if you were the perfect identity or something, you're not getting in those magazines without that. So I understand that. Yeah, kind of the
that's the really unfortunate part, right? Like they're doing it by
it's
commission,
yeah,
essentially. It's like, how the fuck are you is even like the perfect identity, a Joe Blow type thing, like no publication credits supposed to get anywhere close to that without being like an intern there and like forcing your shit on people. Maybe it sucks. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is fully like curated through agents and things. So I didn't even bother trying with those
right,
magazines as a result, because I knew it was just a crapshoot. But even my fake Echo thing and like the copyright page, I say, we sometimes also commission poems too, about 50%. So like even a sort of like quote unquote halfway indie journal like this is supposed to be is commissioning half of their shit from people they know. So yeah, I mean, I guess the thing then becomes, what do you do? What do you do as a poet who's, obviously inclined to do this, values this, wants to be successful, but feels they're kind of pushed out? You can, of course, go the indie route and like, you can send your manuscripts to my and Noah's press now, Per Ube Press, when we're open for submissions again. You can go with people like us and, we'll give you the full treatment and everything, but you're not going to get the reach that you would get from, Picador or any of those big
right,
guys. It will be more authentic and it'll be more honest, but you just won't get as many sales. That's the unfortunate reality of it. I think for a lot of these writers that we discussed, like Toni Morrison and everything, the best career move they can actually make past a certain point is to retire. And
right,
it sounds disparaging, but what I mean by that is people like us who are early enough in our careers and stuff, we still have options. We'll still have different avenues. We're still exploring what we want to say in certain cases. So there's lots of time. But once you've made it, you've written your Song of Solomon, and you've written a few more books. Now you've got the major deals and you're a household name and all of this. But you're finding that you're kind of losing that spark, that sort of make it at all costs mentality you might have had where you really had something to say. I honestly think that strategic retirement is a lot better for your legacy, in terms of if you're, I guess, coming to it from our perspective as quote unquote like more traditional, more critical readers versus just like, oh, it's a Toni Morrison book, I'll buy it. Like I loved
right.
her last whatever one, even though it wasn't as good. Like, oh, I'll love anything she writes. Like for people like the Blooms of the world, you choosing to strategically end your career when you've said what you needed to say and you're not prepared to sort of become a parody of your former self or to sell yourself out by writing something that the old you wouldn't have stood by. I think that's probably the most admirable thing you can do as a writer. Even guys like Welbeck love, one of my favorite books of all time is Whatever, or it's got a French name that's much longer, but it translated into English as Whatever. And he's got Atomized and all of those other ones, but in particular, Whatever is it just, I found it at the right time in my life.
Right.
Absolute stunner of a book. It's so unusual and pessimistic, but just darkly funny.
And the
And it's
animal
written,
doodle chapters and stuff with the
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's exactly, yeah. He's writing these fucking children's books about like cows mating and stuff. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And all the flashbacks to him like holding onto the table legs when the police are trying to drag him out of Veronique's apartment. Like, it's so raw and it's so like self-deprecating that he lived this. You just know that that's what he was doing with his life. And now I haven't really been able to read his last few books. Like the Annihilation, I think, is his latest one. And then there was the one before that, Serotonin, where there's like, I think he was writing about like his current wife having sex with dogs or something. I'm like, dude, this is not what old Welbeck was about. Yeah, he was talking about like jerking off in the club because you're never going to find a girl to love you kind of thing. And like he was talking about basically like wanting to have sex with his coworkers, but being so just done with his life that he wouldn't even try. And now he's gone into like, yeah, sex with dogs, guys, haha, crazy, right? And it's just, man, it's okay, just put down the pen. Like, you've done so much excellent work, just so much excellent work. You've had a fantastic career. Just put down the pen.
Yeah, I mean that's the Tarantino thing, right? Whether he says he's only going to do 10 movies and then stop, we'll see. But like he says the same
Yeah.
thing when they ask him about it. He just says, "Oh, there's a certain point," when, and I think it is like maybe it's energy. Maybe you lose that energy that you have from youth, where you can just like rapid fire things off. You're being super productive and it feels great. And then,
Hmm.
middle age sets in. And then you're kind of, the ideas aren't coming as fast. You have to kind of work it a little bit harder. And then, yeah, that passion starts to die because you're like, this isn't any good. Maybe you've even gotten a reputation now, like somebody like Welbeck or Tarantino or Morrison, where you feel like you have to adhere to that. Like you're, even if it's not real, even if it's something that was created through media interviews or something over the course of your career, like a
Yeah.
fake persona or something that, the public person versus the private writer. And then this, yeah, you feel like you have to adhere to it. And that can affect the passion. That can make you just go down to other routes, or maybe you're just bored. Yeah. I think you're right there. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think about with this kind of what, I don't know, maybe there's a part of most artists that they're never satisfied, with
Yeah.
no matter what they get. I mean, I mean, I hate to keep bringing up Stephen King, but I always end up talking about him just because I think he's such a huge icon in literature, despite writing, horror pop novels or whatever. I always say you look at his latter half of his life, the guy's in his 80s now. The books aren't even close to what he was doing in like the 70s and 80s. Like
Yeah.
they're not even
Yeah, yeah.
close. Like, and I mean, maybe he was doing a shitload of coke, as he said, writing it. And I'm a hot take I always throw out about it is the book falls apart after a while.
Oh, for
And,
sure.
Yeah, like it's too much cocaine. Yeah, like it's too big. It like falls
It's so
apart.
fucking long.
Yeah, but there are parts that are really good. Like because it's but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you just run out of this stuff. You run out of steam. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And then you see stuff like even because I guess there are some people that keep doing it and then doing good work. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just personality. Maybe if you protect yourself enough from all those outside things that would like get inside your head and ruin the process. I don't know. That'd be pretty hard to do when you reach a certain level of notoriety or fame or
Yeah, and I think there are different types of writers, of course, where they're the perennial writers. They're writing about sort of universal topics that will hold throughout their lives. So a lot of the writers that we would probably mutually admire um, are writing about things that aren't, let's say, trendy. So they're not going to go away in popularity. These are, you know, burning concepts that will stay with us. Whereas if you're sort of an edgy writer like me, right, where it's always, at least for this persona, it's in relation to what is going on in this sort of culture. Well, culture is just going to keep moving, and maybe there are things that you'll start to like about it. I don't know. So you're just going to have less ammo. And I think edgy writers lose their punch faster.
right.
And so for us, retirement is probably best in our like 40s.
Yeah, it takes
Where
more energy to sustain something like that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and so I'm fully prepared to retire by like 40. Where like I'm, I've got more projects on the go. I've got more conceptualized and stuff, but how long do you want to stare at the clouds and start, shake your fist at them and shit like that?
Right.
But what you do have to say is usually way more relevant, is way more intense, and you can like kick the door down versus very slowly letting yourself into the room. So I've chosen that approach, but a lot of these writers I see who went for the slow burn type thing, I don't know, they just can't really keep it up either, and they don't know when to quit. But I don't know, retirement, I think a lot of people, just put too much stuff out into the world now.
And
So
I guess money has an issue with that too. Like if you're a Welbeck or something, or even again, I know it's different, but even a Stephen King with this kind of, every time you put out a book, you're getting a nice check, even if the book sucks.
Mm,
It's getting published.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say no to that. Somebody wants to give me
sure.
like 200K or something to publish it. Yeah, maybe you keep going just for that, or I don't know. Yeah, it is kind of. I mean, it's hard to say. Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the trajectory of careers too, and I love doing that on this podcast too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we're bumping up against time here, but one of the themes that I always like to ask when writers come on here, especially people that are versed in poetry here, why does contemporary poetry suck so badly right now? Like, why does, or why would you say? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, contemporary poetry for me, um, it does in many ways suck, and then in others, it's actually really exceptional.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a firm, like 100% hater because, as you'll see in Echo Valley Review, I do quite like poetry. But the worst aspects of poetry today stem from easy poetry. So like
Yes.
Instagram tier, like I'm trying to be vaguely philosophical at like a sixth grade level.
I love you, and
Uh,
here's a cup of coffee that reminds me of you, and yeah,
that shit, right?
yeah, it's everywhere, and it's infecting the institutions now too. Yeah,
Which is funny because I
yeah.
actually like the intersection between those two, like where people are saying like, no, this is the poetry I like and I want to write. Let's analyze this in class, and then the professor's pulling out their hair trying to fucking dig into Rupi Kaur's shit.
Rupi Kaur, yeah, she's another one that always pops up just because she's an icon now, huge. People have heard of her, even if you've never heard of poetry, if you're online, and it's
Hmm.
awful. But then I also have I have a lot of respect for how she did that. Like we talk about independent writers. I mean, literally, her bread and butter was just posting Instagram reels, and TikToks of her reading her very, mediocre, if not outright bad poetry, and that was all it took. Like anybody could do
Yeah.
that, and so like people were pissed at her, people are envious, and I understand that too. But like, yeah, I care more about that the poetry's bad, obviously. But yeah, of course. But
Well,
yeah, please go on. Yeah.
I know people who've worked with her, let's say.
Okay.
That's all I can say. Like personally know her and have worked with her. And yeah, the stories that I have, like most of them pretend to like her, I will
Right.
say. Um, I don't think many people in the publishing world read this and go like, yeah, this really resonates with me. This is the best stuff. They just kind of like begrudgingly go along with it because there's money involved.
That's an interesting
Um,
point. That's an underrated point, Jasper. Like, yeah, that
yeah,
is that
yeah,
is that there's a whole team of editors at these big presses that are like,
yep.
oh god, like the whole time they're doing it, they know it's awful. They don't want to do it, but like it's the only thing making money at the press or whatever. Like, yeah, very
Yeah.
underrated. It's important. Yeah.
Somewhere on an ex-girlfriend's phone is a video of me reading poems from Homebody out in the rain. She bought me fucking Homebody around the time like the COVID shit was going on. And she's like, "Oh, I got this for you. Like, I really want to hear you read it. Like, let's just film it." I'm like, "Fuck it, why not?" And the Homebody was one of the most pandering, like insulting collections of poetry I've ever read. It was so fucking funny. But um, to return, I guess, to my other point,
Yeah,
yeah, what's
please.
bad about poetry? Yeah, so of course it's the identity politics too that we've talked about. The editorial practices, I think, are a major part where there are tons of publications, and especially the indie level, a lot of these publishers aren't really equipped to actually assess what is good and what is bad. I've proven that,
Right.
in fact, by getting absolute junk passed by these like after past review. I felt bad for them because it's like 12 editors, and they're like, anywhere from like late high school to like, maybe 25, 26 years old or
Right.
something. Like they're letting in my shit, and they've got this many people to fix it, and there's still spelling mistakes. I intentionally left like spelling mistakes and stuff to see if they would catch these, and they wouldn't. So then I would have to correct them and send it back and go, oh hey, I caught a couple things after the fact. Like they can't even really their hearts are in the right place, but they're not skill-wise equipped enough to be legitimate editors. And
And
if that's
honestly,
the
not even equipped enough to even run a journal. They usually become defunct after like a year or two
oh yeah,
because one, it's a yeah thankless. You're not making money. It takes a lot of time and energy, and of course it gets yeah.
yeah. I mean, hell, I mean, now that I'm in charge of Per Ube, because Noah was going to take a step back, and it's the two of us here. Like, people are probably going to try to pull fucking stuff on me, and I don't even care. Go ahead, send me junk stuff masquerading as like whatever you want. I mean, I'm trying to create a space where quote unquote edgy writers who are doing it well
Right.
can get seen and get full collections published, where otherwise they just have to self-pub them because they're too
That
raw, they're too weird.
dude, that's such an important point too. And I hate to keep interrupting you with this, but I think that's such an
No, it's
important
cool.
point because like you know, I always say this with the alt lit, and I get lumped into the kind of the quote alt lit scene and stuff like that. I like
Mhm.
it. I love the energy. I love the fuck you attitude. I love that they're doing it themselves. But my problem with the alt lit scene is the same problem I have with the mainstream kind of publishing industry is that it's I hate to say this, but it's kind of bad. It's kind of like it's. I mean, there are gems. There are gems. I'm never gonna say that there are gems all over the place, but it's like, yeah, like I'm always just like I'll read it. I'll be like, oh, this is so cool. They're saying fuck you, and then I read it, and I'm like, I wish this was so much better. Like, just like I'm like, oh my god, like, I want you guys
Yeah.
to stick it to them so hard, and you're just not. like I just like. So yeah, I sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Yeah, editors
It's true.
editors being able to work with a writer. I always say this with poetry too. Like I don't even think at the major presses there is an editor on staff whose job it is to work with the poets to work this collection into the best that it can be. Like they would do with a fiction book or something or a nonfiction book. I don't even know if there's an editor on staff at most of these places that is even qualified to do that. Like
Yeah,
and that's a huge issue. Yeah.
for sure. And I think I was telling the book club from Hell guys, like, I've worked with editors and stuff like that that completely changed the game for me, completely changed whole manuscripts.
Right.
And sometimes it's really just being pointed in the right direction by someone with that vision.
Right.
They're not ideologically compromised in this case, and they have that sort of vision. And it's so instrumental for writers who could get like 90% of the way there on their own. So like maybe these alt-lit guys, like their hearts are in the right place, like they have something cool to say, or they've got a new approach that we're not getting from the traditional world right now.
Right. And more experimental stuff. Yeah.
For sure. And they're almost there, but they just need someone to step in and go, hey man, maybe that like random screed in the middle here, that like this giant chunk of dialogue where the guy's going off on like, I don't know, immigration or something, like it's cool, the idea is fine, but also it's not right here, or like
Right.
trim it by half.
Right. You don't need 10 pages of it. Give me 4. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of shit. And I mean, I'm hoping that I should have enough time. I've got other book projects on the go and stuff, but I should have enough time pretty soon to open up the press for Per Ube. And I want to take on full projects from prospective poets first, and then maybe if you can really sort of tug my sleeve on it, I'll consider a novel or two, because I'm comfortable in those realms as well. But I just feel they're more time consuming anyway. Poetry, we can get right to, we can fix that shit like almost instantly. So yeah, I'm gonna start opening it up to poetry manuscript submissions, so that I can hopefully live out my philosophy as an editor and all that stuff, and help other people kind of, I don't know, get heard, get their stuff out there, start a new little mini vanguard in alt lit where we actually really care about the technique as well as the subject matter.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think that's just such a huge point of it too. It's like, yeah, it's is poetry dead, right? Like, and there's all the kind of like poetry is dead. The kind of, it's funny. I was really into punk rock when I was a kid and stuff, and I remember Rancid and like Lars Fredrickson and shit. and like Lars Fredrickson and the Bastards. I remember that first album. There was like a picture of them in like this, like with all these prostitutes, and like there was a sticker on the fridge, you know, and it just said, "Punk
Yeah.
isn't dead; it just sucks right now." And I
Mm.
just remember I'm like, that's apt. I think that's appropriate for poetry too. Like the poetry isn't dead; it just sucks right now. Like it just kind of, I don't know. Maybe we're just. I don't know. I think I have great taste, so I don't know. I think I'm right.
I think you are. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it sounds like you have pretty good taste for me. I've been looking at your bookshelf behind you there.
Oh,
Like,
nice, nice.
I'm liking what I'm seeing. So, like, I trust your opinions on these things, and I'm with you where alt lit could be better. There are definite improvements to be made, and they could be made fairly easily
Right,
with real skilled editors actually coming in and giving time to these ideas and these artists. And there are some. It's not like we're completely devoid of all of this. You
right,
had the Tyrant scene and all that sort of stuff that was sort of alt lit and everything, and you've had some big figures emerge in the last 5-ish years from that legacy. It's kind of gone away now. There's kind of a void of this again. So it would be egotistical of me to think like, oh yeah, I can be the new Vanguard type thing. But I just wanted to at least lead the charge a little bit with Echolalia Review, where I could show people like what's wrong with things, diagnose it, and go, here's where we might move forward. And obviously what comes next, at least in my personal progression as a poet, is what does good alternative literature that's more serious look like. And I've
right.
got a couple collections planned and such, but those are in the earlier stages. So I just want to raise awareness with this one so that we can move forward toward what is actually cool poetry, like actually shit people like us would want to read and not roll our eyes at or like begrudgingly half accept, like balls to the wall stuff in certain cases, if need be, really out there. Other times just experimental and not fucking gay and lame. Like that's the baseline, just not gay and lame. Like,
I think the marketing too, for like the way a lot of the alt lit scene has marketed some of those writers that did get kind of bigger, they're actually making money. I mean, I don't know if they're making a living, but they're making some funds off of it. That it was the first kind of, they embraced the social media, internet marketing. They embraced this kind of meme marketing, like that you're seeing some of the larger presses and institutions try to embrace now.
yeah,
Definitely, because I totally agree, and I think it's a great idea, because it does just need a little bit of like, yes, we want to experiment, but we also want good work. Like we want to embarrass like the mainstream into acknowledging, that, oh, there's something here. And I think the way you do that is exactly like you said, just a little, like a good editor or something that's kind of like maybe not even leading the charge, but basically, yeah, like leading the charge, like kind of like,
yeah,
this is what's good. The taste and judgment. I stress it all the time. Like there is a total lack of taste and judgment. And maybe it is just like a financial thing. Like you said, you see editors and stuff at some of these things that you've worked with they don't even like the stuff that they're editing, but it's going to sell, so
yeah.
they know it's bad from an artistic standpoint. But I don't know. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we can be a new Vanguard. I mean, hey, if you
Right.
want in on it, come join the team.
Yeah.
Like, it's yeah, we might not get like massive publicity or anything unless someone like me does something really wild and starts getting picked up by outlets. And I've got a couple places running the story soon, so I think this is going to break and hit the mainstream hopefully pretty soon. But we're going to get some eyeballs on this shortly too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I thought I really had to kick the door down with
Yeah.
this just to show people that don't give up. Don't give up on poetry. Don't give up on your careers or anything like that. Some of us could come together with real taste and talent and actually do something really meaningful if we do care about this the way we supposedly do.
It's literally what the Beats did. I mean, they were literally
Yeah,
publishing on Ferlinghetti's Press. Like that's the only place that would publish them. Like,
exactly.
yeah, like that's
Exactly that.
literally,
That's
yeah.
precisely that. I hope Per Ube can, if we have enough money and all that sort of stuff, and I have enough time, becomes something like that on obviously a smaller scale because there's just more content out there all the
Right.
time. It's hard to concentrate it, but like that would be my dream for it, more than anything. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of getting word out there. But poetry lives, for better or worse.
It
Poetry
lives on this
lives.
podcast, that's for damn sure. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
We're trying to bring it back. Yeah, absolutely. Jasper, this has been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Tell people where can they find your stuff?
Cool. Yeah. So you can find a sample of Echolalia Review, an anti-poetry collection, on the Per Ube website. You can also read a sample. Amazon has been pretty generous with the sample they've provided for the Amazon listing, so you can actually read like 40 or 50 pages of it on there if you click the little button. Primarily, the point of sale right now would be Amazon. They were censoring it before because I had a gun on the cover.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a part. It's a standoff between a lion and a hunter, basically, to signal the tension, basically contained therein. But we've edited that now. We've censored it a little bit, so you can now find it on Amazon. You may have to punch in my name as well, just because the American one's a little weird. But yeah, so Amazon would probably be the big one. You can also, through the website or through just like my email, contact me if you want a digital copy for cheap or for review, or you want me to really mail you a physical or some shit. I'm totally okay with doing PayPal that way, while we build a few more like points of sale. But this has odd dimensions and stuff, so we couldn't upload it to other additional points of sale. Like it's very strategically designed, but that limits its sort of availability. So yeah, that would be where you can find it primarily. And yeah, just, I don't know if you have any questions about me or anything that we're doing or whatever, you can reach out to me at jasperceylon@protonmail.com as well.
Yeah, and that's all linked below as well, listeners. And Substack. You got the Substack under this name too.
Oh yeah,
right?
true. Yeah, I'm going to be doing behind the scenes stuff. So like more comprehensive breakdowns on some of the poems and like what went into the experiment, but then also just kind of looking toward the future of poetry. I'll be doing different reviews and analysis and all that sort of good stuff. So that's the Substack is very new, but it's popping off. So
Yeah.
come hit me up on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's linked below as well, listeners. All right. This is fantastic. Jasper, please come back. Please come back. We should do like a poetry one where we go into a book or something, or a poet, or complete works or something like that. But yeah, please come back anytime.
Sure, I'm down. I think we see poetry the same way. I think we could dig into something without issue. I think I'm down. Just hit me up, and I don't know if you personally want to get involved with the Per Ube mission. Hit me up too. I think good to have someone like you around for that.
For sure, absolutely, man.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored. I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Inner
Resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources. American resources.
Being bored,
Some activities are intentional, right?
it shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.
If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard.